You're listening to Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back, everybody. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2014. 30 days into the new year. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. And I am fighting a brutal cold. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I'd like to welcome everybody around the world listening to the show. Welcome back. What a great week of radio. Last night, Dr. Stephen Greer. Tonight, Philip Mantle. Tomorrow night, Leslie Kean. I'm just honored. You know how I start off every show. Started off with a salute to the proud men and women in uniform, fighting the good fight all around the world. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you can't hear me right now. Think about that. Happy birthday to Phil Collins of Genesis. Phil is 63 years old today. Gene Hackman is 84. How does that make you feel? Oh, man. And our dead guy birthday today is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, born in 1882. Too much math for me. I have no idea how old he would be today. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You know what to do. Everything is Fade to Black. J Church Radio, Jimmy Church, KJCR, Fade to Black. Go, follow, like, and subscribe. If you're at artbell.com right now, if you're at Dark Matter, if you're on the radio page and you're looking at Fade to Black, all the links are right there. Just go and follow us. Let's kick up those Twitter numbers tonight. That is the goal. I think we might have time for open lines. Tonight we will be speaking with Philip Mantle live from the United Kingdom. And I've been working on this for a couple of weeks, and we finally got everything set up. And I believe right now it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in the UK. And I'm sure he's listening to me right now just going, Jimmy. Oh, man. But, yeah, live from the UK. It's going to be great. And as everybody knows, Philip is the editor of UFO Today and a very prolific writer and very knowledgeable guy. We're going to be covering a bunch of different subjects tonight. And as always, you know, it's just a conversation. And we'll see where that conversation leads. But I'm really interested in picking his brain on Ray Santilli. And last week when Mark Center called in and the conversation led to Ray Santilli and the Alien Autopsy film, and I had already been in touch with Philip about coming in. It was just a weird coinkydink, and stuff like that does happen. And so now, tonight is Philip Mantle, and I'm really excited about talking to Philip, and I want to thank him for coming in. All right, you can always email me throughout the show. The email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can email us in confidence. You can do whatever you want to do. You can email me direct. You can go to our contacts page and email us there, where we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. Feel safe. I had an email a couple of weeks ago. Somebody heard me say that. And goes, dude, these aren't encrypted. Come on, man. It's entertainment. The call-in number, as always, is 323-825-5045. If I have time tonight after Philip, we will be taking your calls. Again, 323-825-5045. Last night was Stephen Greer, by the way. The calls were coming in, and I apologize for the audio with Stephen. The rules are with this show is no cell phones. We couldn't get him on a landline. That was his choice, but he insisted, and with with the CIA and everything else that's involved in his life, I'm sure that he didn't want anybody to know his location. That's the only thing I can think of. But I apologize for that, but it's live audio. And when you're doing a live broadcast like that, and it is what it is, the show must go on. And we ran with it. At times, the audio was pretty good, and throughout the show, I was getting this email. Man, it's garbled. What can you do? There's nothing I could have done on my end. All I did was ran the faders full blast and let the chips fall where they may. But in the end, it was an amazing interview, and it was an amazing conversation, and it went all over the place. But I do apologize for that audio. Okay. Now, tonight, we will be bringing in Philip Mantle. Will be on Skype, so that's going to be a different story, and it's all going to be good. As always, the bumper music tonight is Doug Aldrich from Whitesnake. And, again, I have to thank Doug every single night. And when Doug and I were talking about the bumper music is a very personal thing for any radio host. And it sets the tone, it's personality, it's the way people are. And Doug's music, I help produce and engineer and all that stuff. And so I have a personal connection with it, but also I really enjoy the music. And it sets the tone, keeps things upbeat. And when, Doug listened to the show and he said, you know what, let's do this. Well, it's a very personal thing. And so when you listen to that music tonight, you have to understand that music is me. And that's the reason why every single night I just have to thank Doug for allowing us to have the privilege of having his music on the show. And that's who it is Doug Aldrich. Okay, the forums page, as always, go over and participate. Tonight, the subjects that we're going to cover with Philip, I will jump over to the forums page and get all of that updated, and I'll hang out just like I do after every show. And I know that we're going to talk about the Alien Autopsy. That's one of the things, and he's got a new book out, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But we're going to talk about the current events over in the UK, and I do want to talk about Rendlesham Forest. And the thing is about Rendlesham, it's an old event, and we're all familiar with it. But for some reason, in the last 6 months or so, the last year, there's been this huge resurgence of this all over television, all over the internet. Books are coming out, and it's something that just won't go away. And he's over there. And I know in my past conversations with Philip that, he's been on location. He's checked it out. He's met just about everybody that's involved and interviewed. And I don't know where that's going to go tonight, but I'm very curious. The one thing that I want to know is how does Great Britain feel about Rendlesham? Do they talk about it like we do? And it just seems like you can't escape it today. All right. Now, I am battling a cold. If there's any gaps tonight, if there's any gaps, I'm sneezing. I'm muting, and I am sneezing. I am battling a brutal cold. Okay, just stay with me and bear with me through all of that. Okay, I appreciate it. Over on Stan's blog, at jimmychurchradio.com. Go over and check out the Göbekli Tepe article that he's got there. Our pictures posted. I mentioned it last night. Göbekli Tepe is important to all of us. And part of the reasons for doing this show is to teach. I want everybody to learn something. There's something out there all the time. And Göbekli Tepe is one of those subjects. And look at the pictures and understand one thing. 14,000 years old. 12,000 to 14,000 years old. It's an insane subject. Go and check out Göbekli Tepe. Over at artbell.com, by the way, I mentioned yesterday, you need to go and look at this real ghost caught on camera, this videotape. Go and check that out. It was shot at the Clophill Church ruins. And also, there's a UFO contest, and there's a little form underneath where you can comment on this videotape. Now go and check that out as well. Very cool. And yesterday, when we were doing the interview with Dr. Greer, we brought up, I think he did, Malmstrom Air Force Base. And we talked a little bit about Bob Salas. And there was there's a video clip over at Serious Disclosure of Bob Salas talking about the event up at Malmstrom Air Force Base. And as you know, we interviewed Colonel Salas on the show last month or the month before about the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident. Today on CNN, it's reported by CNN, this is the headline. Air Force Chief cites systemic problems as nuke cheating scandal grows. Now check this out. Air Force Secretary Deborah Lee James said today, Thursday, that 92 officers from the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana are now implicated in a scandal over a proficiency test administered last year. Now, a couple of weeks ago when the story broke, I didn't bring it up at that point. There was 34 officers originally brought up in this, but it's with the 341, the 341st Missile Wing. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, it's a couple of things. Number one, they operate about a third of the 450 Minuteman III nuclear missiles that we have pointed around the world. Now, that is an insane thing to think about. And the other thing is, who is operating these missiles now? If they have just brought down... Now, these 92 officers, by the way, have been declassified, decertified, meaning that they cannot carry out any nuclear-related duties. Now, are they going to be replaced? Are they going to have to retake the test now that they've cheated and lied? Is that who we want manning these missiles? But this is the deal. This is the same Air Force base that, they've had a lot of problems in the past, but this is the one where a craft, a UFO, came down and shut down 16 nuclear missiles all at the same time in the missile silo that Bob Salas was in. Now, think about that for a second. Now, not only that, last year, Malmstrom Air Force Base failed a safety and security inspection. And this is just the latest incident. They had this last year. They had the other incident that happened in 1967. And it's a crazy thing. You have to remember that this is our nation's first line of defense. Poor Malmstrom. You know, they just can't escape it. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Going to take a quick break. We are on the Dark Matter Radio Network. And we are setting up right now, getting everything ready for Philip Mantle. When we come back, we should be up and ready to go. Don't touch that now. Stay with us. Be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue?
Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. It is Thursday. It's a beautiful day. Beautiful night. A little nippy outside, and I am battling the cold of doom. If you hear me sniffle, if you hear me breathe heavy, that's what's going on. Yeah, I just might not make it through the show. I'll do everything that I can. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Follow us, like us, subscribe. I get a lot of emails throughout the week as we are patiently waiting for the uplink to get started here for Philip. I get email throughout the week. Where can we listen to the show? I missed the show. Where can I listen to the show? I'm dumbfounded with that for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is an internet-based show currently. You never know what the future is going to hold. But currently, it's on the internet, which means you're sitting at a computer, which means you're at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Navigate the website. Go to the highlights page. You know, YouTube. The links are right there. Go subscribe to YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. We post everything. As the show's complete, we post them. We are currently looking... We've been shopping around and trying to find the best podcast service for everybody. And as soon as we get that done, we will get all of the podcast information up there for you. But in the meantime, there's the YouTube channel. Go to the highlights page at JimmyChurchRadio.com. The shows are posted there. If you want to subscribe to YouTube, go over there. All the shows are there. You don't have to email me. You know, it's crazy. And I'm not in any way, you know, just saying, hey, man, come on, don't you have a brain? I'm not saying that. I'm saying I thought that we made everything really simple for everybody. So all the past shows are right there. Go to the highlights page, and you can check that out. I had a bunch of sports stuff up there. I took it down. Painful to watch. And I love the new life. All right, I think we're just about ready. Shoot me an email throughout the show, Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. The producers here will send them in to me. The best email, if you get through that first level, then it is brought in here to the studio, and I will ask Philip a question in real time. Shoot me an email to Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. All right, and we will have pictures posted throughout the show on the website, JimmyChurchRadio.com, about the subjects that we are talking about. The website is completely interactive. I'm very proud of the way that we've got all of that set up. So you can just sit there, listen to the interview, and look at the stuff that we post in real time on the website. All right, which means every time you hear me mention something, just refresh the page or, you know, get stuff up there. Okay? All right, I think we're just about ready. Let's get this cracking. Philip Mantle is the editor of UFO Today magazine and is the former director of investigations for the British UFO Research Association. He is also former Mutual UFO Networks representative for England and is an honorary member of the Research Institute on Anomalous Phenomena in the Ukraine. He is an international lecturer on the subject of UFOs and has also worked for a variety of TV and radio companies around the world. His books have been published in 6 different languages. His most recent book is a novel on alien abduction called Once Upon a Missing Time, based off his years of research into the topic. I would like to welcome live from the UK, editor of UFO Today, Mr. Philip Mantle. Philip, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. What time is it there?
Well, it's an awful hour. I think it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know there was a 3 o'clock in the morning. I thought there was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but there you go.
It's funny because when you and I were talking earlier this week about coming on the show, and you said, is it live? What time am I going to be up here? And I just felt bad about that. And, you know, hence the time difference. But we do appreciate you coming in. I'm very excited. You ready to go?
Yeah, ready.
All right, I start off every interview, and the audience here is quite used to what I'm about to say, but I just started off the same with each guest, which is, this is just a conversation. It's unscripted. We're just sitting in my living room, sharing a couple of pints, if you know what I mean, and we're just going to see where the conversation goes.
That sounds fine by me.
Okay. I'm going to start off with something a little bit generic, but for everybody over here that may not, and our audience does reach around the world, by the way, but that may not be familiar with you, how did you get into this crazy world of ufology? Good
question. I mean, I've always had an interest in what I would deem the paranormal. Going back, way back to when I was a young boy at school. We used to have a thing when we'd had the summer holidays, we'd come back to school and the teacher would say, right, you know, you stand up in the class, tell people what you'd been doing on your summer holidays. So, you know, some people had been to the beach, some people had been off, you know, on holidays overseas. You know, I'd been to the spiritualist church with a friend's grandma. So as far back as I can remember, I always had an interest in all things paranormal, unusual, call it what you will. Wasn't a great one for pulling the girls at school, I can assure you. But
right.
But you know, so as far back as I can remember, I've always had an interest.
Did you ever witness anything that kind of stirred the pot and then, you know, pushed you over the edge?
Well, yeah. I mean, my initial interest was the paranormal. It was ghosts, you know, spirits, that kind of thing, and then, running alongside of that, I used to have an active interest in astronomy, the space program, and so on. Now, a friend and I went to the West Country of England, into a county of Wiltshire, to visit a chap there who had his own observatory. He'd built his own observatory. And one particular night, we couldn't use the telescope. I don't know if it was cloudy or whatever. But I was reading a book, and it mentioned a town called Warminster in Wiltshire. And apparently there'd been all these things called, you know, UFOs sighted there back in the 1960s. Well, we were only a short drive away, so we didn't have anything better to do. Off we went. We found this local hillside. It's called Cradle Hill. Stuck ourselves on top of the hill, and lo and behold, we saw some unusual lights that we certainly couldn't explain in astronomical terms. It wasn't the planets, the stars, you know, or whatever. It may have had a rational explanation, because we were unfamiliar with the area. However, that sparked the interest. I thought, well, I'll ask a few questions about this UFO topic. I'm sure it'll only take me a short while and I'll find out everything I know. And here I am. That was back in the late 1970s.
Right.
Here I am all those years later.
I want to touch on a few things directly related to England, because we're over here, you're over there, you've got your finger on the pulse. But right on the news over here is this Heathrow incident. Do you have anything? Because it seems to have faded away over here in the media. Is there anything that you know of over there that any follow up on what happened?
Not at all. I mean, it seems to have been a 1 minute wonder in the media, both local and national.
Right.
And I know it made the headlines in different parts of the world. And then it has quite literally died a death. When you inquire at places like Heathrow, you don't get a response. The Ministry of Defence will no longer answer your inquiries. They say we don't investigate UFOs anymore.
Right.
We've released everything to the National Archives. So unless there's somebody who's willing to stand up and be counted, who was there at the time, perhaps witnessed this particular incident, then we're left in limbo. And that can happen, of course. That can happen. Maybe not straight away, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, it just seems, and again, by all accounts from over here, again, you're there, so, I'm sure the reporting that you hear is a slightly different version, than we get over here. Probably a little more honest. I don't know. But, there was official reports on this sighting, and it just, from the government, and then all of a sudden, silence. And I was just fascinated with that.
No, well, what we're intending to do is file a request, because we now have the Freedom of Information Act, which we didn't have at one point.
Right.
And we have we call it the Civil Aviation Authority, whereas you have the Federal Aviation Authority. So we're going to file a request through those. We've purposely left it a while, so if there's any documentation flying around, we want to give it time to settle and accumulate. For example, if you're really hot and you file this request straight away, they haven't got the paperwork by that time. There isn't a paper trail to follow. You've been too quick. So just let the dust settle a little bit.
Right.
Wait and see what happens. File the appropriate request, and then we'll deal with it accordingly.
With Rendlesham, and I'm not changing gears here, but I'm actually staying focused on Great Britain. With Rendlesham, over here, the last, and I'm going to say 6 months, maybe reaching back to about a year, but there has been a sudden resurgence of interest in the Rendlesham case. Books are being published on television here. I can't speak for the UK, but here it just seems like there's something on Rendlesham 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on the network, cable and satellite feeds over here. Is it the same thing over there? Do you guys look at Rendlesham the same way that the United States audience does?
Not at all, no. I mean, there's very little in the media here. Some of the television that's been made in the United States has filtered through via the satellite channels and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's not big news here at the moment anyway. We may see some of that. You mentioned there's a new book coming out by Nick Pope,
yep,
John Burroughs and Jim Penniston.
Yep.
I think that's out March time. Nick will be over here later in the year. He now lives in the United States, of course. So that will probably raise some interest. But no, it's not the great big news story that perhaps it is in the USA.
Do the Brits in general, do they consider, Rendlesham their Roswell? Is that the way that it's perceived over there?
Absolutely. I mean, there's many good things about it. It's known as our most notable case. It's the one that's best known in that respect. And there's a prime example of what we were just discussing regarding Heathrow. When Rendlesham happened, the various UFO research groups were notified about it relatively quickly, both in the area and further up country where I live, but nobody came forward. It took a while for it to filter out. And then, of course, Larry Warren was the first to go on the record some years later.
Right.
So it finally filtered its way out. And so, that could happen with events at Heathrow and other places.
Were you able to interview any of the witnesses?
I've met some of them, not at the time. I've met the deputy base commander, Colonel Holt.
Right.
I've met Larry Warren a number of occasions. I've managed to speak to Jim Penniston on the telephone. And I was the first person, for example. We have a piece of paper. It's called the Holt Memo.
Right.
A few days after the incident, Colonel Holt wrote a memo about it, sent it to the Ministry of Defense and to the United States Air Force headquarters. For years, our Ministry of Defence denied any knowledge of it and said they had no paperwork on it at all. Of course, that document first surfaced in the United States under the Freedom of Information Act. And I submitted a further request to the Ministry of Defence, and they finally admitted they had it and released it accordingly. It's a very important document. It's only one page, but it does detail, in brief, some of the events that happened, and it's signed by Charles Holt, Colonel Holt. It's not a piece of paper that mysteriously appeared through someone's letterbox and it can't be verified.
Right.
It is the genuine article.
Have you been to the scene out in the forest?
I have indeed. It's some years ago now. It's quite different now compared to what it was way back in 1980 when these incidents happened. There is even an official UFO trail now. There's some signs showing you which way to go. Oh. But a lot of the forest initially, we had a big storm not long after that took a lot of the trees down. Of course, some of them have been cut down because it's on Forestry Commission land. So it's there for a purpose. So it is a good bit different. But yes, I have been on that location.
When you have met with the various witnesses, and you just mentioned Peniston and Holt, or you've talked to Peniston on the phone, how do you feel? Okay, let me back up a little bit. I'm not a skeptic on this case. I know that something happened there, but it seems to me that the story has gotten a little more fantastic as time has passed. How do you feel about the credibility of everybody that's involved? They're all going to be on the show next month after these two books come out, so we'll start to tackle it then. But how did you feel about the sincerity of everybody?
I think that if you look, at this closely, the basic story has always remained the same.
Right.
Peniston and Burroughs, when they recount the night in question in late December 1980, that hasn't changed. Also with Colonel Holt, who went out the following evening, he actually recorded some of the events on his own dictaphone.
Right.
Which you can't change. It's long been released, both audio and has been a transcript. And Colonel Holt's, testimony hasn't deviated one iota. He took a while to release it because he was, initially still involved with the United States Air Force. But when he retired, he told the whole story, so to speak, which you would expect him. That's what he would do. He was a career officer. I know, Peniston and Burroughs have added things down the years, but they've given their reasons for it. And I'm sure they'll elaborate that more in the book when it comes out. And not only that, Nick Pope has gone on record with the book as co-author. Nick is a man who I trust implicitly. I used to pester Nick when he worked at the Ministry of Defence.
I know you did.
UFO report. So
yes.
Because he tied his name to it and his reputation, I think that gives it a lot of credence.
Okay, let's change gears a little bit. The Rendlesham case for me, I'll just leave it here. Something happened, and I'm not going to let it go. I wish there was a way to get to the bottom of everything, and somebody knows something over in the UK. And even though with your Freedom of Information Act, and I know that Nick says that everything has been released, I just don't think so. And I think there's quite a bit of there's a lot of people inside the government that know a lot about the case, and it's just not being talked about. And that's my personal view. I don't have any inside information. I don't.
Well, I'll give you an example. A couple of years back, I interviewed a wing commander. He was called Alan Turner, retired. Mm-hmm. He's also been honoured by the Queen. He has an OBE, and he wasn't referring to Rendlesham, but Wing Commander Turner's security classification back in the 1960s and 70s was so high that when the American spy plane flew into the UK to refuel or whatever, he was notified about it, and at that point it was the most secret aircraft in the world.
Right.
And he was on duty on the radar, and I cut a long story very short. They tracked 6 unidentified targets over mainland Britain. It was also tracked at Heathrow and another military radar station. Now, Wing Commander Turner spoke to the Ministry of Defence immediately And they informed him he had to submit a full report, which he did. But can you find that anywhere in the Ministry of Defence files? Not on your life. It's not there. And that's just one incident. So like you say, sometimes it's not what is there, what's been, it's what's not there. Where did it go? Who sat on it? You know, and this is just one of several incidents. It's not a one-off. There are others. So it would not surprise me if we go back to Rendlesham, that other information, you know, the Ministry of Defence in respect aren't lying. They have released what they've got.
Right.
But other material went elsewhere. Where that may be, I don't know.
Well, when you request information, are you doing it in general terms? I mean, how do you go about that? And what if you had a specific document, like this case with the 6 unidentified objects? Can you specifically request something? I mean, how do you go about it?
Well, I mean, now if you write to the Ministry of Defence, you'll get the standard reply. They will just say, we have released everything to the National Archives.
Right.
And that is it. And you can be as specific as you want, but you'll still get the same standard reply.
Because this incident, like you're saying, the 6 objects, those, you know, there's a paper trail on that, but it doesn't seem to have been released.
That's right. I mean, like with Wing Commander Turner, I mean, where his information ended up, we don't know. There's another incident where a police officer in West Yorkshire had a sighting. Again, I cut a long story short. He submitted an official report. That's not in the Ministry of Defence files either, you know. So where they've ended up, your guess is as good as mine.
Can you give the Ministry of Defense maybe a pass card, a hall pass, get out of jail free card, in that maybe they don't know that the documents exist, but they are there?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's a play on words, isn't it? We have released everything we have
that we know about.
Yeah, they're not lying. Somebody else has it, you know, not them.
You like stirring the pot, don't you?
Well, it's the truth. I mean, we know they've lied in the past because they lied about having the Holt memo. They had it.
Right,
you know?
right.
And eventually, when it came out in the US, they could no longer deny it. And we got them to release it. So they lied, you know. But there's an old saying as well. I'm not sure if it comes from the US or the UK. They call it stonewalling. You know, they tell you things, but don't actually tell you anything.
Yeah, we call it the same thing here.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same.
How I want to ask you about UFO Today really quick. Well, first off, congratulations, and how did you get it started, and how are you doing now? How is it going for you? Yeah,
it's going good. I mean, how it got started was that our publisher, it's called Dead Good Publishing, have published a number of print magazines and digital publications in the past. And one of their paranormal magazines, I used to write a regular column for it. And it was called Tales from the Mantelpiece, you know, for obvious reasons.
I've read them, yes.
All about UFOs. And they said, you know, Philip, we've had a look around. There aren't that many UFO publications available. Would you be interested in editing one? We have a title for it. They picked the name, not me, UFO Today. And the first issue came out last November. That was a bumper issue. It was a bi-monthly one. And it was absolutely jam-packed. But the next issue, which will be out in about 3 days' time, will be monthly. So we've shortened the page count, but we're going monthly instead of bi-monthly. Such has been the interest. People wanting it. They don't want to wait 2 months. So fair enough. We'll go for it. It's gonna be every month.
Is it both electronic and analog?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't buy a paper copy. We can download it in every digital format you can think of. But there's a number of reasons for doing that. You know, the digital age is upon us. We have to realize that. It gives us a greater deal of flexibility to do a digital publication. We're not restricted to page count. We don't have any postage costs. You can access it from anywhere in the world. It's there instantly. You're not waiting for it dropping through your letterbox.
Right.
And we can change things as and when we like. We're not reliant on a printer. You know, the post office here is being sold, and so it just makes sense. It's a UFO magazine for the 21st century.
How is the content? That's the word I'm looking for. Do you have a problem with content today, with the way that the ufology has changed, or do you have as much as you did, like it was years ago?
There's never any problem with content. I mean, the way I look at it from an editorial point of view, there is no subject that we won't consider under the umbrella of UFOs.
Right.
And we also look back at archived material, because we have to remember, like any subject, new people are coming into it all the time, so we can't expect them to know everything.
Right.
So we'll look at historical and archive material as well as up-to-date things, quirky things. We'll look at ancient astronauts, crop circles. I mean, you name it, we'll look at it. We have an international lineup of contributors and columnists. One of the things that I struggle with is what to leave out of each issue rather than what to put in. And I have emails from people, when are you going to publish my article? And so there's never any shortage of material.
I want to change gears just a little bit, but again, I'm staying on that side of the pond. The Belgian UFO wave, when that happened, the triangle wave, when that happened, that seemed to change what people were seeing in the skies around the world. No longer that classic flying. Well, let me back up. Let's go back a couple of decades. It seems like we've gone through phases of what people were seeing, whether it's suggested or imagination, or they were seeing them, or they were authentic. It doesn't matter. But we went through a flying saucer phase, the classic saucer, and then the cigar shaped stuff, and then suddenly everything is triangle shaped. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I mean, again, we'll back up even further. We had an aircraft here in the UK, in the Air Force, called the Vulcan bomber.
Beautiful,
no longer in service.
Beautiful plane, by the way. Beautiful.
It was
plane.
A big delta wing bomber.
Yep.
Now, throughout the 1970s, we had UFO sightings here that we gave the nickname the Silent Vulcan. A, because it was triangular in shape. B, it didn't make any noise. It wasn't the Vulcan bomber, because if you ever see it, it's a huge, great thing and makes an awful noise.
One of the loudest. I think it was the loudest aircraft at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we already had those. And then if you look at the wave, the so-called wave in Belgium, again, if you just back up a little bit, if you go to the United States, it actually started there, in my opinion, because in the mid-1980s, in Westchester County, which I believe is upstate New York, there was a whole, wave of boomerang stroke triangular sightings. Eventually was published in a book called Night Siege. That seemed to shift. And then across the Midlands of England and the north of England, we had, a wave of triangle sightings, some of which were witnessed by police officers. I mean, we couldn't handle the amount of reports. And then, hey, presto, it seemed to pop up in Belgium. As one part finished, it moved somewhere else and then ended in Belgium. The thing about the Belgium sightings, of course, was that it was tracked on radar by the Belgian military aircraft. And the powers that be there were quite open about it. They've spoken on the record and have continued to do so ever since. They had an official investigation. And of course, what happened was, around about this time, what popped up on the TV screens was the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber. Right. Some people tried to put the two and two together. However, you don't fly the stealth bomber over a friendly country like Belgium. And it certainly hadn't been flying over the UK since the 1970s. Area 1, Nevada, and you've got some big places there where nobody lives. That's the place you fly these things, And I think it's just because of that, this type of thing now catches the imagination and the headlines. But if you look deeper into the sort of UFO reports that the various organizations receive around the world, they're still quite mixed. And again, we go right back to the beginning with Kenneth Arnold. He didn't see a flying saucer.
No, he did not.
It was delta shaped.
That's right.
So there was nothing new in that respect. But yes, I mean, it goes in, I think it's waves of popularity, what people are interested in. So if you're in a publishing field, you publish what people are interested in. You know, it's the same with music. You know, music goes round in circles. There'll be a rock and roll revival, and all these rock and roll groups will spring up out of nowhere. You know, where have they been? Well, they were always there. You know, it's just that it's popular now. And I think it's the same in ufology. I don't think it's any different.
Are the triangles still being cited over, or did they just stop in, you know, because at one point in Belgium it was in the thousands at one point.
Absolutely. I mean, the Belgian gendarmerie reported it in great numbers, and they were on the lookout for it. You know, after the first sightings, you know, they took it seriously. They have a different perspective on this thing. It was handled pretty seriously right from day one, where it's not so much here, it's not so much in the US, but it was there. There's a different mindset in Belgium, you know, and we're thankful for it. I mean, we had Belgian researchers over here lecturing about it, you know, as these things were literally happening. And, you know, I think it's to their credit. They didn't dismiss it. They didn't put any exotic explanations on it. Like I mentioned Wing Commander Turner earlier, he tracked these 6 objects. He didn't say what they were, but he said, Philip, I can tell you what they weren't. You know, and the same happened with the things in Belgium. You know, they couldn't tell you what these things were. They could just tell you what they weren't. They could not get to grips with it, no matter how they tried.
Why do you think the Belgians, and one of the things that just still, when I look back at that entire episode, is the press conferences with their Air Force, you know, presenting the radar tapes right there for the press. Well, of course, the press was screaming for it, but they went straight there and they revealed it. Obviously, they were concerned, and I'm still impressed with that today. But why won't Great Britain or the United States do the exact same thing? What's the difference? What made Belgium so different?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're just a different society. I mean, Britain by its very nature is much more conservative than a lot of Europe, despite what people may think. So, you know, the old stiff upper lip. We have a lot of red tape here in the UK, even in today's modern society, certainly on an official basis. Doesn't mean there's anything sinister, you know, it's just because that's the way it's always been. It's just red tape. And we even have laws here that perhaps aren't used anymore, but they're still on the statute books that go back to medieval times. You know, you're not allowed to take your flock of sheep down the main highway at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, you can talk on the radio at 3 o'clock in the morning, but you can't do anything else, you know. So I think a lot of it is red tape. It's embarrassment. There is still this stigma that is attached to the subject. You have to remember, it hadn't been a big subject in Belgium. It's only a small country, small population. And it wasn't what was seen, it was the people that actually made these observations, the gendarmerie and then the Air Force, who were highly respected. So they just took the stance that we have to take this seriously. This is not some crackpot ringing up. This is our own people, specialist people we know and trust on a daily basis. And I think it's to their credit.
They scrambled, and just correct me if I'm wrong here, but they scrambled a bunch of F-16s and so forth up into the air trying to chase a few objects.
Absolutely. I mean, when the gendarmerie were reporting these things, they took it seriously straight away. And they were determined to try and get as much information. And they put 2 F-16s on standby. And 2 F-16s, one of which did intercept and got a radar lock on, and they made that available to the general public. And, you know, the characteristics that it shows on radar are unlike any aircraft that we're aware of. You know, Belgium's part of NATO, you know, it's part of the defense there. They weren't flying in SOP with camels, you know, these were F-16s.
Exactly. Exactly. This is a good spot to take a break. When we come back, and by the way, we're talking to Philip Mantle, editor of UFO Today. Well, you know, you're a broadcaster, you're an author, I don't know how you get it all done. But thank you for coming in. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to really, stick, a sharp stick in Ray Santilli's eye. We're going to talk about Ray Santilli. You down for that, Philip?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's take a quick break. This is KJCR Fade to Black. Your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Stay with us. We'll be right back. One 800-916-6232. That's the number you need to call when you are seeking spiritual enlightenment and searching for your true purpose here on Earth. www.lovespellstoday.com. They provide psychic readings, love spells, reversal of spells, custom spells, chakra balancing, energy work. Divine guidance is just one phone call away. Call 1-800-916-6232 for your free psychic reading. I did. And tell them Jimmy sent you.
Hello, I'm Heathrow, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
My name's Nick Dominguez.
Hi, I'm Rex Dominguez, and I listen to jimmychurchradio.com. Jimmy is your preacher.
Amen. This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and this is Ari Gold. We're of the Honey Brothers. Well,
Yes.
we are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier,
And I'm Ari Gold,
we're the Honey Brothers.
and you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
KJCR.
jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will. On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, KJCR. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We're on the Dark Matter Radio Network, and we are talking to Philip Mantle live from the UK. And Philip, are you still with us, first off?
Yeah, I've not fallen asleep. I'm still here.
You've got to love technology. You know, for us to be able to do this, and this is one of the things. Technology that allows a show like this to broadcast without any restrictions from governing bodies on our end. You know, I don't have anybody coming in the studio here, some Men in Black guy or whatever, kicking down the door. And I've had some pretty intense guests on this show, but there's nobody that can stop us from speaking. And I just love it, and the freedom that allows. And here you are, you know, you're over in the UK live. You're a very important guest to us, but you know, we don't have to wait for you to fly over here or have some horrible phone connection or some nasty record. You know, technology is amazing, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I mean, you could never imagine this 20 years ago. You know, people would have laughed in your face.
Yeah,
you know, when Bill Gates said everybody's going to have a computer in his house.
Exactly.
Talking about witchcraft, you know. Isn't it? But he's right. He was right, and it's amazing. I mean, I've got two grown-up daughters, and I tell them what it was like when I was a young boy, and they think it's the Dark Ages. You know.
Well, you know what's funny, and that's a great point. Is I have two teenage daughters, 18 and 19 years old. And the world has changed a lot for them in 10 years. And if you think about what they have grown up with now, and it goes without saying, because you, myself, people our age, yes, we do remember before remote controls. Some of us remember black and white television. Some of us remember 2 or 3 channels. Okay, we take that as a given, and we can sit around as old fogies and reminisce about the old days. But the fact that my daughters at the age of 5 and 6 had cell phones now, and the reason why they had cell phones, not so much that they wanted them, but I needed them to have them. I felt safer that, you know, my 2 little girls going to school, that they had a cell phone in their backpack just in case. But that's where technology is. You know, I didn't have a TV in my bedroom until I was 16. They had flat screens at the age of like 2.
You had a bedroom.
Exactly.
Exactly. A cardboard box in the corridor.
And I just can't imagine the amount of knowledge and information that is available. And it's happening in front of us now. And when I say I can't imagine, I can't, because the way that you got your information and myself when we were kids was reading, maybe from the news, but it was from the library, a little bit from TV. But now they are getting downloaded and uploaded 24 hours a day.
Yep. I mean, technology is a runaway train. I mean, there's no stopping it. Where it will end up, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, and speaking of technology, let's talk about Ray Santilli, because he's actually a part of this conversation. But before we get into Ray specifically, last week on the show, and this is a live broadcast, and so I take callers, and I never know who's going to call in. And Mark Center called in last week, just boom, out of the blue. Hey, Jimmy, what's going on? Enjoying the show, that kind of thing. And my conversations just go wherever they're going to go. And for some reason, we fell into the Alien Autopsy film, and the bitter taste that it's left in my, I was one of those guys that went out and actually, here in the valley where I live, north of Los Angeles, there was a Tower Records. Remember Tower Records?
I do, yes.
Okay. Speaking of technology, okay. So back when they existed, they were about a block from my house in Sherman Oaks. And I heard about this video coming out. And I went down to Tower Records and mentioned it to these guys at the desk, and they looked at me like I was out of my mind. But they looked it up, and sure enough, this video was available to order, or was getting released in the next couple of days. So I fork over my whatever it was at that time, $69 or whatever you paid for a videotape. It was a lot of money, I remember. But I ordered it, and it came a couple of days later. I was one of those guys. I could not wait for that videotape. I was so excited. And I went home and watched that thing 3 or 4 times the first night, invited people over to my house over the next few days to have autopsy video parties. And I was one of those guys that was, a fool parts with his money, right? Are you there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a long story. I mean, I'd like to say hello to my friend Mark, if he's listening this morning. Mark was one of many who was intrigued and fascinated when the film hit the television screens back in 1995. Now it's going back a way bit, but I was in contact with Ray Santilli back in 1993. I was a director of the British UFO Research Association, and we simply had a letter from him. I mean, this is pre-email, a letter. And he just mentioned, that he might be interested in making a documentary. So I replied. We spoke on the phone, and then out of the blue he said, but I should tell you, I've got film of the Roswell crash. And obviously that piqued my interest.
Right.
So the conversation went, show me, yes I can, no I can't, yes I can, no I can't. This went on for about 1.5 years. I was in London at one point. I met him. He told me this story about being in the States looking for archive film of Elvis and so on. And he bought a bit of film, and then he met this old boy who was a former military cameraman, and he bought the film from him. Cash, no receipts. That was it.
Did you know of Santilli before this letter?
Not at all. I mean, he was a small businessman in London. His main business was music,
right?
Back catalogs, this kind of thing. He'd license this and he'd relicense it to someone else and all this kind of stuff. He's a huge music fan. So anyway, I forgot about it for a while, and then out of the blue, I'd got his business card and I rang him up in early 1995, and I said, do you still claim to have this film? And he said, yes. I said, show me. And he said, okay. So I travelled to London, went to his office, and hey presto, there it was. He showed me a number of films, some of which has been released on television, some of which hasn't. And I was just thinking on my feet, Jimmy, what do I do now?
Of course.
At that point, Ray had no television interest. He was just going to sell it, on what they called sell-through, on video. There was no DVDs then. So I was also a conference organizer for Bufora. I had a conference set up for later in 1995 in August. And I just said, will you show it at the conference? And he says, if you will help me research it, Philip, yes. So we shook hands that day. A few months later, the story got out by accident. I spoke to a journalist friend of mine and mentioned it just as an off-the-cuff remark. It appeared in a little local newspaper in the north of England. I got a phone call from a press agency. They asked me a few more questions, and I didn't think much of it. And then, hey, presto, my phone and fax machine were going off crazy from all around the world, And then the story was out. And the rest of the say is history.
Okay, I need to back up. I wanted you to finish your thought there, but let's back up, and then we're going to pick up where I just interrupted you so rudely. You said that you saw he played you some footage in his office. Some of it was broadcast on television. Some of it wasn't. What did you see? Well,
I had a number of visits over a couple of months period. First and foremost, it's a piece of film. It runs for about 8 minutes, black and white, which all of it is, and it's called the tent footage. It's not been released on television. Basically, you see a creature on a slab that's covered by a sheet, so you can see its head and its hands and its feet. To the far side of it are two men in white coats, appear to have a scalpel or a knife in their hands, and they seem to be handling tissue. Occasionally, there's a dark figure walks in front of the camera. There's no audio with it. There's an old oil lamp hung up. Santilli told the story that this was where there was a field tent set up out in the desert, and it was the first recovery of the body before it was shipped anywhere. It's very poor quality. And believe it or not, Jimmy, he actually even gave me a copy there and then. And I have it here in my archive. So it's called the tent footage. And then on subsequent visits to Santilli's office, saw 2 autopsy films. Not 1, 2. Same creature. One has its leg damaged and its wrist damaged. That's the one that's all been seen on television.
Right.
The other one is totally intact. A similar medical procedure is carried out, but there are some slight differences. And then the 4th piece of film is what Santilli calls the debris film. It looks like it's in a tent. Mm-hmm. You see a man holding up bits of wreckage, bits of junk with symbols on and so on. So there are 4 separate pieces of film. Only 2 of them have been seen on television.
I'm forced to ask a couple of direct questions here, and I just want your gut feeling. When you saw the tent footage, you saw that first, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when you see this tent footage, how did you come away from that? Did you think that what you were seeing was, you're in Great Britain. I was going to say the Holy Grail. That wouldn't be right. But did you think that you were seeing that this is it? Did you feel, or did you have something inside of you that was going, this is BS? I mean, how did you feel?
No, I mean, neither of those really. I mean, bearing in mind, I've been speaking to Santilli about this for about a year and a half.
Right.
So it was a relief that there was actually some film there. It wasn't just a story anymore. There was something tangible. Now, my initial reaction was, what is the best approach here? How can we best research this? And it was quite clear from speaking to Ray that he had his own agenda, whatever that may be. And at that time, there was no television involved. And I thought the only way to find out more about this film is to get it out into the public domain. Because if we get it into the public domain, Fred may come forward and say, hands up, that's me, I'm an actor.
Right, right.
Or, Bill may come up and say, that's a story my granddad told me about, and I saw that bit of film back in, 1960 before he died, or whatever.
Right.
So that was my aim. I thought, if we can get this into the public domain, then maybe we'll find something more about it. Hence me asking him to show it at the conference. I knew with it being associated with the conference, it would be released into the public domain.
Well,
so I was just thinking on my feet. I didn't go home and plan anything. I just asked him there and then on the spot, and he agreed.
So, and again, if it shows at the conference, now you're connected to Santilli too. Now your reputation is on the line. So obviously you felt confident enough that possibly this footage was actually authentic?
Well, what we did was, behind the scenes, take a fairly neutral stance, and we gave Santilli every opportunity to prove his case.
Right.
And of course, he never did.
Of course.
But again, it wasn't released on television until after our conference. Our conference was the first public screening of it anywhere in the world.
Right.
It was released a couple of days later, I believe, on TV. And it was then and only then, when it was shown around the world, that the various experts in whatever field could come forward, from the medical profession, from TV special effects, from film analysts. And they did. They came forward from all around the world. And by this time, anybody could access the film, scrutinize it till the cows come home. So my plan, such as it wasn't a plan. My initial thoughts had worked, and I fully expected, Jimmy, that within no time at all we'd have more information, not from Santilli, but from people not connected to him at all, that would come forward and say, well, it's this or it's that, and have the evidence to support it. But that didn't happen. Nobody came forward. So we were left trying to, scramble as much information as we could from the black and white images. We didn't have a piece of celluloid to examine. The bits that Santilli gave us were absolutely useless.
Right.
So all we had, like anyone else, was the videotape, and it was like you watched it a few times. I mean, I there's no dialogue with it, but if there had been, I could have repeated it backwards. I looked at it till I was blue in the face.
We all did.
But there's nothing obvious on there, Jimmy, that would say it's a fake. The guys in white suits don't have a digital watch on,
Right.
There's nothing that jumps out of the screen and says, the alarm bells are ringing. Everything seemed to fit. We even had medical professionals saying, well, it seems to be a medical procedure. It doesn't, we can't say for sure that these are doctors, but it seems to be that there is no blueprint for how you do an autopsy. There's certain things you would do, but
right.
The rest, and they said, well, it seems to fit. So what I used to say to myself, I would shake the alien autopsy tree every now and again to see what fell out of it, and it took a long time, but eventually, the answers did fall out of the tree, and we got there in the end.
What was Santilli's attitude through all of this in the beginning? Was there any telltale signs that, he was a little bit of a shyster, or was he?
I mean, if you'd have come across Ray Santilli selling used cars, it would not have surprised you. But he's also a very charming guy. He's a nice guy to get along with, and one of the things he did say, though, however, like I said, his main business was music and music memorabilia. I believe he has a huge collection of Elvis memorabilia, for example.
Okay.
And on one visit to his office, he had a shoebox full of black and white photographs. Absolutely going crazy over them. He was drooling over them. They were all unpublished photographs of the Beatles that he bought somewhere many years back for, £40 or £50. But now, of course, the Beatles anthology was coming out, and he'd actually licensed 2 of them to the Apple Corporation for a nice fee. And he says, imagine this, Philip, I release a piece of film that turns out to be fake. What would it do to my reputation? And I thought, well, that's a fair point. It was a fair point. It was a lie. It was
right.
I didn't know that at the time. But but he's a likable character. He's the kind of guy who could probably steal your wallet and smile at you in the face. But he's a very affable man, and very easy to get on with. A very slippery character, and he's not stupid.
We're talking to Philip Mantle about the Alien Autopsy film and footage, and the character Ray Santilli, and this is Fade to Black. Okay, so moving on. By the way, Philip has got an excellent book, probably the definitive book on this. It's called the Roswell Alien Autopsy, and we've got the links up on the website if you want to go check that out. Okay, so moving on. So what happened next? Did he consult with you? Now, this is the thing that's fascinating for me, and thank you for talking about this. This is something that is just like nails on a chalkboard over the years with me. Every time I see the footage, and they refer to it all the time on television when they talk about Roswell, they flick and they treat it still to this day, I guess because they don't have anything else, that it's authentic footage. And so, but you were involved from day one. Now, when take me to when the video is coming out. Did he consult with you or talk with you about how to proceed?
Not at all. I mean, I didn't get involved in any of Ray's business affairs.
Okay.
I was trying to be involved from a purely research point of view.
Right.
I spoke to Kodak here in the UK. They have offices in Hemel Hempstead in England. They agreed to analyze any film. Close to them is also the British Film Institute. And again, Kodak got them on board, all free of charge. They would, so that was my role. And Ray was also making his own little documentary, which is probably the videotape you bought. It wasn't just the footage. There were some bits and pieces on there. I lined him up with people like Stanton Friedman and various others. He had no idea who they were.
Right.
And so that was my angle. I was trying to look at it from a research point of view. He did tell me some of the things that were happening business-wise, but not in any great detail, because, it was none of my business, to be perfectly honest. And, we knew about the television broadcasts. I only later found out the amount of money he made from various broadcasters around the world. I mean, just by Fox alone, I think it was $200,000 plus a share of the video sales of the documentary. So I'll give you some idea of the type of money that was involved.
Right.
Initially, it was broadcast in over 20 different countries. He sold it piecemeal to them all. So it wasn't one distribution deal. And then, we just carried on trying to find out as much information as we could.
How did it start to unravel for him?
Well, it started to unravel with an American special effects company called the Really Dangerous Company. Now, they got hold of the video like everybody else, and they looked at it like only a special effects team could, and they slowed it down and moved backwards and forwards, and they noticed little anomalies in it. For example, when the head is being sawed open, the head actually wobbles. So it's not connected via a spinal cord.
Oh.
But you have, you could have watched it forever and you would never have noticed that. So they tell you where to go and watch it. And then once they point it out to you, you think, hey, there's something not right here. And there was various other little things. Now, they couldn't prove it. This wasn't definitive proof, but it was circumstantial evidence that suggested that all was not right here.
Right.
Also, Santilli started to change his story. The tent footage was originally part of the package to Fox. He withdrew it right at the death because on there, the two men in white coats, you can see their face.
Ah.
Now, he'd come up with some story saying, the cameraman couldn't be sure about it anymore and all this lot, but it was withdrawn. And there was a big argument with Fox about it. They'd paid for it. So his story started to change. He also did a French television chat show, and he's telling his story about looking for this, Elvis footage, and he bought some, and somebody phoned in and said, well, I met the guy you actually bought the Elvis footage from. You claim it's the same guy as your cameraman. Well, it's not. So again, his story started to change, and you're thinking, well, there's something not right here, but knowing Ray as I had got to know him, if you confronted him in any way, he would just cut you out. He wouldn't answer your phone calls or anything like that. So I took a different approach. I would say to him to his face, Ray, this film's real. Prove it to all these doubters and these people who are saying this, that, and the other. But behind the scenes, we're like a duck on water. We're calm on the surface, but the legs were going like mad.
Right.
We got the first hint that something wasn't right, but we weren't going to let him know that we agreed with it. And so that's the approach I took. So in public, I seemed to support him, and I got a lot of criticism for that, and I'm probably rightfully so. But beneath the surface, I was trying to dig and find out. I got the first clues here that all wasn't right, and just carried on doing that right up until the end. And then once I had the answers, then confronted him. It's very easy, Jimmy, for someone to say it's a fake. That's the easy way. You'll have had people ringing your show and say, it's a fake, it's rubbish, it's this, it's that. That's the easy way. To prove it is a much more difficult process. And I was determined to get to the bottom of this damn film, no matter how long it took. I'm pleased I stuck at it, as did others. Mark Center was a great help in many, many different ways. Mark's seething mad about it. I think he'd punch Santilli if he ever could, if he ever came face to face with him. And I understand that.
Yes.
I really do. But I had to sort of, not go down that alley. I had to remain calm and try and figure out where to go next. Bear in mind, we got the really dangerous company saying we believe this is a special effects. So we have a small film industry here in the UK. I phoned special effects companies. And they said, it looks a bit like, Bill's work. Well, I'd ring Bill, and he'd say, it looks a bit like Harry's work. I'd ring Harry, and he said, it looks a bit like Graham's work. And I'd ring Graham, and I just went round and round in circles and got absolutely nowhere. And I thought, well, it's only a small industry. If it was made by one of these guys here, a special effects guy, I'm pretty sure they'd know who it was. So that went down a blind alley. I got a clue that it might have been made in Brazil. I contacted people in Brazil. They hadn't got a clue what I was talking about, So every lead I got, I followed up. And I didn't necessarily tell Santilli about any of it. But it took a long time, Jimmy. It took a long time. But we got there in the end.
Do you think anybody, called up Ray going, hey, man, I got a phone call today from Philip Mantle. He's on to us. Do you think that ever happened?
Yes, I do. Because the way we made the first inroads, I got an email from a guy, and he says, I know something about the Alien Autopsy film. I know who made it. So I eventually got a phone number for him, and I rang him, and of course it was clear as soon as I started talking to him, he wasn't talking about the film that everybody had seen on television. He was talking about the tent footage, which nobody had seen.
Right.
So I thought, this guy knows what he's talking about, because he hasn't seen this on television. And he says, the guy who made this is called Keith Bateman. He gave me his name, and he said this was his company. I used to work for him. And he said, what happened was, I went to do a bit of work for him. Keith made Keep Fit videos and karaoke videos and this kind of thing. Small company. And from time to time, they would license music from Santilli. They knew each other, And so I was in his office one day and the phone went, and it was Ray Santilli. So this chap said, is that Ray Santilli of the Alien Autopsy? Keith Bateman fell about laughing and said, we made it. But it was the tent footage. So I finally tracked Keith down. His original company had closed, but he moved on elsewhere. I found where he lived. And again, it took me a long time to persuade him to tell me the story. And he told me the story whereby, he said, we used to have little brainstorming sessions, most of which was absolute nuts. He said, we just wanted to come up with ideas to make some quick money. And he said, somebody one day in the office said, wouldn't it be great if we had some film of Roswell? Santilli said, yeah, it'd be great. So Keith went ding. He went away to a place in Bedfordshire, into a barn on a farm. So that's where you see the tent footage shot. He put his son on a piece of wood, covered him in a white sheet. He had a polystyrene head, and he made some eyes, some big black eyes. Two of his colleagues who worked for him are the doctors in the white suits, and the guy who walks with his back to the camera is actually the farmer. So,
okay, whoa. That is almost too much for me to wrap my head around that quick. Okay, you've got to be kidding, first off. I know you're not, but let's back up for a second. Bateman, how did you bait Bateman? Because it sounds like he just suddenly just went right down the list and gave you all of the information that you had been searching for. You got it all at once. So take me back to that moment before hold on, Philip, for just a second. I understand you went, you go A, B, C, D, his son, the mask, the eyes. Where did they get the mask from? Who were the other actors? I know that we're going to get to that in a second too after the break. But how did you bait him to give you the specifics?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, this is pre-email days, or certainly didn't have Keith's email at that time.
Right.
So I wrote to him, and I spoke to him on the phone, and he wouldn't cooperate at all, Jimmy.
Okay.
He was polite, but he would not cooperate. And I said, well, if you don't cooperate, I know for a fact you are the guy. I know the story. I will release your information, to a number of people. And I did. It was a bit of a sly move, and they pestered the living daylights out of him. Now, Keith's a nice guy, but he's a real Jack the lad. He's what we would probably call an Arthur Daly, He'll do anything to make a bit of money. But it dawned on him, hold on a minute, there's a story here. There may be some money in it. And eventually, I tipped off the newspapers.
Right.
One of which spoke to Keith. And, they paid him a fee. And he told not all the story, but enough of the story. Santilli just denied it, but we were up and running. We got the first of the 4 films had gone. It was 1 down, 3 to go. And I mean, I went down and interviewed Keith. He lives right down on the South Coast, in person. A lovely man. He showed us the original tent footage, which was shot in colour. He run it through his computer, changed it to black and white, put some scratches on it. It was the kind of thing you expected to see. This wasn't graphic. The head of the alien was a polished iron head that you put wigs on. All he did was cut some eyes in it, which he filled the eyes in with orange peel. But in the dark and when he'd run it through the computer, you couldn't tell what it was. I also spoke to one of his colleagues that worked with him who was in a wheelchair, and he said he wanted me to get up on the table. He said, but I wasn't doing it. And not only that, Keith also told us about some of the other stunts they tried to do down the years. So not only did he have the expertise, he had the character to do it as well, Jimmy. So he made this film, took it to Santilli and said, here you go. Santilli says, that's rubbish. Go away and get me a quote for a better one. So that's what Keith did. He came back with a figure. He put a few £1,000s on it for himself. Santilli said, no, it cost too much. But there the seed had been sown. Santilli kept a copy of the tent footage on video, but the idea had been implanted. If we really could have something better than this, there's money to be made. And that's how it all started. It was a bit of a prank, bit of a laugh, but there you go. Hey, presto.
And millions of dollars later, look where we are today. Okay, this is another good spot to take a break. And we're going to pick up when we're talking to Philip Mantle live from the UK over in England. What city are you in again?
I live in Pontefract in West Yorkshire.
I love the accent.
The land of milk and honey.
Philip Mantle, editor of UFO Today. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We'll be back right after this. Don't touch that mouse.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We are live in the UK with Philip Mantle, editor of UFO Today magazine. And he's still with us out there, Mr. Mantle.
I am indeed. I'm still here.
Now, we're talking about the Alien Autopsy film and footage and how it was pulled off. And we're talking about Ray Santilli. We've got a whole host of characters that are about to come into the picture that I'm going to talk about. But one of the things we were just talking in the break a little bit, it has left such a bad taste in my mouth that this was done, to me, for money, with malice, from the word go. I don't think that Ray Santilli, of course, I would love to have your opinion. I don't think he understood. We all hope something like this would just take off and be great and, you punched your lottery ticket. But I don't think he had any idea how big it was about to get and what the reaction would be.
Not at all. He didn't have a clue. I mean, people have talked about Ray's marketing plan. Well, he didn't have one, Bear in mind, he was originally just going to release it on videotape. There was no television involved. There was no press. And it was just my loose tongue that released it to the news media. And, of course, this was the height of the X-Files on television. There were a lot of interest in this subject. So it was perfect as far as TV and newspapers were concerned. They didn't really care whether it was real or not. There's something new to show. And it was just by sheer chance that this happened at that time. But Santilli is not a mug. He then realized the potential of it. He got a guy into work for him called Chris Carey. And Chris handled the contracts and the business side of things. I mean, I've been in Ray's office when it was just pandemonium. I mean, TV crews would just turn up at the door unannounced. And it wasn't planned. So Ray, many years later, made a movie called Alien Autopsy. No big shakes, but about the only thing that's accurate in it is that they didn't expect it to take off like it did. They had no idea. Of course, he capitalized on it when he did, but they literally, nobody did. None of us did. And I didn't think all these years later I'd still be talking about it. I thought it'd be all over and done with it in no time at all. But like I said, he is a businessman, and he also thought, well, I'm out of my depth here. I'll bring someone in to deal with this, which was Chris Carey. And he did a very good job for him. I've got to say.
Well, they always say, especially with detectives, you want to get the answers, chase the money. Follow the money, and you'll get your answers. And that's what happened to you. Your first break in all of this was chasing down the guy that shot the footage for money, an opportunist, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. But that was your break in the case. And so how did the name start to come forward? The alleged cameraman and the other actors that were in the original footage.
Well, again, going back to the Fox broadcast, Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction, that was made by TV producer Bob Kiviat. And some years down the line, Bob was doing another show. I think it was called World's Greatest Hoaxers,
right,
which was a number of hoaxes. And he wanted to feature the Alien Autopsy again. Obviously, he couldn't go too far into it. So I gave him the details of Keith Bateman. Now, although Keith didn't appear on it, one of his former employees, who's actually in the tent footage, did, and went to the United States and appeared on camera. And said, well, that's me. and it was, that's him. So, in the eyes of certain people, that was the end of it, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of the end.
Right.
Way to go. So, cutting a long story short, Jimmy, I wrote an article sometime after that for a magazine here, and just fortunately, it was the cover feature. So the Alien Autopsy was on the front cover of this magazine, which was on sale in the newsstands. And a chap, again, emailed me and said, I didn't know there was any interest still in this film. And I said, yeah, why? He said, well, I know the man that made the dummies. What? Yeah. Is there any interest? I said, of course. I spoke to this chap on the phone. He says, it's a friend of mine. He made the dummies. So I met him, and he gave me his name, but only his first name. It's a guy called John. But what he did do, he gave me enough information, not straight away, to find out who this John was.
Was it any of the guys, the special effects people that you had called earlier? Was it one of the?
Well, I was just coming to that.
Okay.
We've been looking for special effects guys, and John Humphreys was a sculptor whose work on occasion had gone into the film and television world. But per se, he was not a special effects guy. He's a sculptor. And I got his name, and I contacted him, and he wouldn't play ball.
Of course.
However, I I'd kept in touch with the TV producer, Bob Kiviat, down the years, still in touch. I tipped Bob off, and Bob spoke to this guy, spoke to his agent. He confirmed the story. We were about to break the story when this sculptor called John Humphreys, was signed up to work on the Alien Autopsy movie. So he went quiet. But one thing he did say was, it's not me you should be speaking to. It's Spiros. I was thinking, who's Spiros? It's a name that had never cropped up anywhere before. I mean, never. And so we were looking, it's not a popular name by any means, but it's just one name. It meant nothing.
Oh, Spiros Melaris, right?
Yeah, but we only had Spiros to begin with.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So with a colleague of mine, we made a little cheap, a real homemade DVD that had the interview with Keith Bateman on it and one or two others, and we put it online. Cheap and cheerful, Jimmy. Lo and behold, who contacts us? Spiros Melaris. As soon as he said Spiros, I knew, because it's not a common name. It's not Bill, Fred, Philip, Jimmy. Spiros. I mean, we're a multicultural country, I know, but I don't know anybody else called Spiros. And he told me the whole story. I mean, I couldn't shut. I mean, you can't. He's a great guy, but you can't shut him up once he starts talking anyway. And I recorded it. I thought, just in case, I didn't tell him that. But I thought, just in case I get the only one opportunity to speak to this fella, I'm going to record it. And I did. And I spoke to him again. And this time I told him, and we went over things. What he told us was, again, he met Santilli by accident. He used to have his own film crew for hire. And he met Santilli at a thing called MIPCOM out in France, which is like a TV convention. And Santilli told him this story about this tent footage, and he'd lost a load of money on it. So Spiros went to see him back in London, and he showed him the tent footage, and Spiros says, hey, it's a fake. That's never been shot on 16 millimeters. It's 35 millimeters. And Santilli told him this silly story. So he said, I'll tell you what, I will make you your Alien Autopsy film.
Oh, I have to. That's a great point that you just brought up. Yeah. So he knew by looking at the footage it was 35 millimeter, and it would have been impossible to shoot in 1947 with 35 millimeter.
Yeah, he could tell just by looking at it. And of course, that piece of film has never been shown on television.
Oh, I did not know this. That's an okay.
So Spiros was the best friend of John Humphreys, the sculptor. And Spiros is a very lively guy. He has a mixed background. He trained as a mechanic as a young boy. He's also a magician. He's a member of the Magic Circle. And he said, I spent more time, he started off filming, little things himself. Eventually he had his own film crew and make pop videos and a whole host of things.
Right.
So he's multi-talented. And he says, I'll make it. They got the money put up by a chap called Volker Spielberg, who was a business associate of Santilli's in Germany. There was a rumor going around that Spielberg was behind it. Well, it wasn't Steven Spielberg. It was Volker Spielberg,
Now, when you first recorded your interview with Spiros Melaris, how much time has now passed, from your original meetings with Ray Santilli before when you saw to now?
It's 10 or 11 years.
10 or 11 years. Okay. Yeah, that is a long investigation. You must have really been...
As soon as he started talking, everything just seemed to fall into place, Jim. We got snippets, that fit into the puzzle. And he literally, he had a girlfriend. She hired the props. They were used to hiring props for the pop videos. So she hired all the props. She did the medical research. And the set they built in Spiros' sister's apartment in London, which was by coincidence being renovated at the time, so it didn't matter how much mess they made.
You're saying the operating room was shot in an apartment? Okay, yes. Okay, all right. I want to come back to that. Continue.
But Spiros had a different attitude. He wasn't doing this for money. The money that they were paid for the job, he paid his crew, he paid John Humphreys to make the dummies. He says, we didn't make any money out of it. He says, to me, this was a prank. He said, I'd got fed up doing, the pop videos and the little things. We wanted to make the next step up. We thought if we could pull off a stunt like this and fool people, we could then hold our hands up and say, look how good we are. Come and hire us, That was his reason behind it. So he went away and made it. When they viewed the first autopsy film back, they'd made a mistake. His girlfriend said, if you show that, it will show up as a mistake. It was a mistake with the medical procedure. And he says, Santilli was in, apoplectic. We spent all the money. So Spiros put up the money to make the second Alien Autopsy film, which is the one you've seen on television and on video. And even then, when it came out of the mold, there'd been an air pocket in it, which is why you get the hole in the leg. They improvised. They went to the butchers and got a bone from an animal and put that in the knee and got a blowtorch and burnt the leg and make it look like a wound. They improvised. They then shot it and filmed it, and hey presto, that's the one you've seen. So it was actually that was the second one that was filmed. The first one was wrong. But there's also little anecdotes in between. He said, we'd done the first one wrong. So he says, this creature is left on a slab with all the giblets, and the blood everywhere.
Right.
And we went home. He says, the next day we'd actually been burgled. The door had been broken in. He says, can you imagine the look on the face of the burglar when he opened the door and saw that lying on the slab? But he said, at first we thought, we've been rumbled. And we thought, well, we can't because it's a burglar. He's not going to hand himself in and say, I found a dead alien on a slab,
That's hilarious.
So there was things like that. And not only that, Spiros has pieces of film, which you would probably call the stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor.
Right.
He's shown us little snippets of that as well. He also kept a diary at the time. I've seen his diary, so everything was noted in it. And he made up the story about, the cameraman's and how it was shot and where it was filmed. And he had a storyboard. He's quite a good artist. He kept the original storyboard, which I've seen, and he's kept it all in file. He was going to do even more. He was going to do a crashed flying saucer. And he had a huge file of American trucks that he'd got. He even still had his original faxes from Kodak, looking at the edge codes on the film to say what was, and all this is there. And he then went on and he spoke to Volker Spielberg on the telephone and asked him if he could record it. He said yes. And there is Volker Spielberg admitting it was a fake, and couldn't understand why Santilli won't admit to it now, and lots more of information. So it all fell into place. Of course, Santilli denied it all. Spiros spoke in public once at a conference I did. But, one of the questions has been asked is, why didn't you speak up at the time, Spiros? He said, well, look, this was just a stunt. I gave it to Santilli. It was released. I didn't know it had made any money. I'm not interested in UFOs. you know. And it was only when the Alien Autopsy film was going to be made, the movie, that Spiros got suspicious. Something happened, and he thought, I'm going to look into this. And we're talking a lot of years afterwards. And then he suddenly realised, what had happened. He said, I went on and got on with the rest of my life, doing my job, my work. He set up his own TV studio. He was busy. I mean, it was not part of his life. He was not interested.
Right. He wasn't interested in the genre, so he probably never heard anything about it, except for on a professional level of making the new movie.
It's only because he was doing his research that he found the little cheapy DVD that we'd made.
Right.
And saw his name all over the internet and thought, I better contact this chap, and that's it. And he's continued collecting information ever since, slowly but surely. It's not the top of his agenda, Jimmy. He's a businessman. Yeah, he lives in London, and the Alien Autopsy film is way down on his list. Other things are top of the list, but he has gone on the public record, spoken in public, and it was quite a brave thing to do. He stood up at a UFO conference, and said, "I'm the guy who made this thing." And there was a number of people in the audience who were not best pleased, I can assure you.
No, I would have been one of them. Right. Were you able to, with Spiros, did you handle the original film? The snippets around, was this stuff that you had checked out?
Originally, he actually did shoot it in 16mm, and he handed the film to Santilli. Santilli had the film then transferred to video.
Oh, I got you.
But he has the original camera there that he shot it on, and so all the other material he has. I've seen some of the outtakes which are on video. He did some of the editing on the final video edit, not the celluloid. He did it on the video. And even the guy in the debris film was a guy in military uniform. You don't see his face, but that's Spiros's brother. The white suits that the doctors wear, his mum made them for him.
Have you named
the autopsy table?
Have you been able to identify everybody in the footage at this point?
He's told me all their names bar one. Yes.
Okay.
And the only one he won't tell me is his girlfriend. This is because she now has an important job within politics. So, for obvious reasons, he's kept her quiet. But he's told me all the other names, yes.
Now, I want to jump back really quick. I've wrote a couple of notes down. This is the beauty of having just a conversation. It goes where it goes, but we forget some of the things that we just covered. One of them, I want to go back to the operating room that was shot, that footage in the apartment. The analysis that Santilli went ahead and provided from, about all of the objects in the room and that they were period correct. How did they pull that off? I mean, when you look back at the footage now, do you go, all right, well, it couldn't have been, it's easy because we know it's a hoax. But how did they pull that off on such a limited budget?
Well, if you look at it, Jimmy, there aren't that many artifacts in the film.
Right.
You have a table and a creature.
A clock.
Guys, you've got a clock on the wall. A phone. And some medical instruments.
Right.
That's about it. If you look carefully, you can even see the electric socket for the wall clock. And again, Spiros had been used to hiring props, so they did their research. Now he found out that, for example, some people went, "Yeah, gotcha. The phone that's on the wall has a curly flex." They didn't have curly flexes in 1947, but they did. But it was something you had to pay a little bit extra for. But he purposely did that. He says, I put a number of little what looked like red herrings in. And you think, I've got you. But then when you actually checked up, you were disappointed because they did have them. Same with the wall socket. Although it was a fake socket, the real socket was behind it. He got a wall socket from 1947 and fixed it to his set. And he said, with the medical instruments, we couldn't get them from a museum because they had to look new. So we couldn't have things that looked old and rusty and cheap. They had to be new.
Right.
And what he also did, when he hired the props from different places, and he also had them delivered to a different address so that there was no paper trail that all went to the same person. So, the medical instruments were delivered to one address, the clock to another, and so on. So it didn't all end up at his house or his girlfriend's house. So he spread it all over the place, which was a very clever thing to do if you think about it. And he said even when Santilli released some film labels, he claimed, you know, the film is in a can, the can is in a box, the box was sealed by a sticker over the top, you know, and there's handwritten notes on this film. He even researched what kind of film Kodak used in that time, and he had all the faxes from Kodak. You know, they were all there, and the handwritten labels were actually done by Spiros's mother, because she had old-fashioned handwriting. You know.
Well, one of the things that I want you to comment on this really quick, that Mark Center had pointed out, the way that Santilli presents the film stock with Kodak, he never sent Kodak film stock to be analyzed. He only gave them batch numbers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, again, you know, they bought some old film literally off the market that was from 1947, but it was of a baseball match, you know, and it has the edge codes on it for 1947. So they asked Kodak, what are these? And they said, it's 27, 47, 67. We recycled the codes, you know. So, you know, and that was it. But Spiros, to one film analyst, did an old magician's trick. He cut the edge code off the baseball film, spliced it onto his modern 16mm film, right?
Right.
And when he showed the guy this, he just held his fingers over where the splice was. It's an old magician's trick. It's misdirection. To the film analyst, it looked like a continuous piece of film, but Spiros's fingers were over where the splice was. So the edge codes were on the Alien Autopsy film. Hey presto, you know, that's where his magic tricks came in. Not a simple thing to do.
And the genius of this, and I'm looking at this from 2 or 3 angles, but they all just like converge into genius. I'm giving Ray Santilli way too much credit, or maybe not enough, to be honest. But you've got the simplicity of the operating room. You know, there's not a bunch of stuff in there. It's actually minimalistic, but everything is period correct. And so you have that. And then you have the fact that Ray presents, what's the word I want to say? The illusion that Kodak actually checked out the film. They didn't, but he makes you feel that they did. All they did was confirm batch numbers.
Yeah, I mean, when I got to know Santilli initially, I thought, if this film is a fake, I don't believe Santilli's made it. And I wasn't disrespecting him, but if you looked around his office, he never made anything. You know, it was just his nature. He would license something, buy something, you know, never actually made it himself, Jimmy. So I suspected maybe, could Santilli have bought this film and, you know, realized it was hokey, but really didn't care, you know, and was going to sell it anyway. Somebody had sold it to him. But, you know, my thoughts were correct. He didn't make it. The real genius behind it was Spiros. Santilli was just the front man, you know, and he was the sales agent. And he did a remarkable job at it. And, you know, there are a number of other things that happened, again, purely unrelated, but important and coincidental. For example, a number of people said, there is no way you could get top secret film of anything. You just couldn't get it. And then we have a thing in the UK called car boot sales, right? You can go and sell your unwanted gifts. Somebody bought some videotapes at a car boot sale for a few pounds, you know, for pennies. They put the videotape in the player. What's on it was top secret training of the SAS. So here's them saying you can't find top secret film of anything, and you can buy top secret film of the training of the SAS, you know, on a car boot sale. So little things like that helped, and he could offer that as an example, you see. Yeah, that hit headlines, you know.
Again, I'm not trying to give him too much credit, but maybe we're not giving him enough. You know, the way that everything just happened to line up and pass, you know, it passed the muster test for quite a while. There was a lot of people involved in trying to debunk this. And then, I want to, I'm going to stay in the same thought. The way that he pulls in Stan Winston and gets, you know, him to go on film, and Mr. Wecht, you know, he gets him on. these are guys here in the States. I can't speak for Great Britain, but Stan Winston is at the top of the top, or was, I'm sorry, at the top of his profession of special effects. Somebody that, if you ask his opinion, it's the last word. His answer is the last word. And the same thing with Mr. Wecht. And so to get them on, for me, when the documentary came out and the video came out, and I see these guys at the end, I'm like, Stan's not going to go on, Wecht's not going to go on the record unless this is authentic.
Yeah, well, that happened in different countries, Jimmy. I mean, because Santilli sold the licensing rights piecemeal to various countries, they would bring in their version of Dr. Cyril Wecht and Stan Winston. I mean, I lectured in Italy a few times. The leading pathologist in Italy went on the record and saying, I think this is a medical procedure. Didn't say it was an alien, wouldn't commit himself.
Right.
He says, as far as I can see, that is an authentic medical procedure. And he wouldn't say any more, but this happened around the world. So you can understand how public opinion was swayed when you have these, officials from various disciplines, saying, well, it looks the genuine article to me. Of course, they didn't have all the information. They only had the videotape to work with, and they did the best they could under the circumstances. But yes, I mean, when you come to Stan Winston, he was and still is, even though he's sadly no longer with us, the top dog in the world when it came to movie special effects. And that swayed a lot of people. But, here in the UK, we had a Home Office pathologist, Dr. Christopher Milroy, shown the video, and he submitted a full report in writing. And I have a copy of that. It's in my book. And I spoke to him on the telephone. He didn't live that far from where I do. I spoke to him on the phone. And as far as he was concerned, it looked like an authentic medical procedure. And this happened time and time again.
Exactly. And Cyril Wecht, when at that time in 1995, there was a lot of sensational television programming going on with, we just came, the O.J. Simpson thing was out there. And all of these famous cases were, maybe not famous, but courtroom docudrama, live stuff was all over television. And Wecht was somebody that was taking the stand, and he was somebody that people knew here in the States. You may not have known Stan Winston, but Wecht was somebody you just saw the week before giving live testimony in some murder trial. You know what I mean? And then, boom, now he shows up on this Alien Autopsy tape. And it was something that helped sell the tape and the authenticity of it. And do you think Wecht, in the end, did he ever come out and say, you know what, they took me out of context, or that's not what I really meant to say, or...
Well, I don't think he did, Jimmy. I know Stan Winston did. He retracted it sometime later in a magazine article and said he thought it was a fake. But he didn't back that up with any evidence or why he came to that conclusion. He couldn't say, well, if you look at this, you look at that, you look at this, that makes it a fake, like the Really Dangerous Company did.
Right.
In fairness to Stan, he may have been a lot busier than the Really Dangerous Company, and wasn't going to waste his time. And they asked him to comment later, and he said, "Yeah, you bet." But at that time, nobody knew it was a fake. We're talking, not too long after the event in question. But there was Santilli he certainly planned certain things, but there was a lot of going that happened around him that he had no control over, that just happened to help him. Like I said, the X-Files were going great guns on television,
right?
And so that helped. People don't think about that, but it did. People were used to having UFOs in their living room every Monday night or whatever it was, and it was a great show. So the whole atmosphere was perhaps ready for a Roswell film, an Alien Autopsy film, and hey presto, just by chance, up pops the Santilli film.
Now, we didn't. I want to get to Ed Gurman. How did he play into this in the end?
Well, Ed's an old salt in the US, a nice enough guy is Ed, and he's like many independent researchers. He became fascinated by the Alien Autopsy when it was shown on television, and wanted to know more about it. But Ed used to live in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Right.
So he's used to the desert area, and places like that. And Spiros actually went to Roswell and interviewed a number of people on camera there. And one of the other things he did, he hired a local guy. There's a local light aircraft you can hire there, and he overflew the area, and he made up a fictitious crash site, which Santilli later released. And he used some old maps as well, and but Ed took this literally, and he believed a number of people went before him trying to wander around in the desert, but Ed believes he found the actual crash site. And I've been there, I've been on the spot with him, and it is a peculiar place. I don't think it's a crash site of anything, but I'm not a geologist. But he's convinced that the Santilli film is real, that Spiros and all the others are liars, that Santilli is the genuine article, that the film is real, and he knows where this crash site is. Excuse me. I detail all that in my book. There's pictures of the place there. You would never find it in 1,000 years, Jimmy, if you were looking for it, Right. But Ed, that's my phone going. I do apologise. That's the Men in Black. We're coming off the air.
Exactly.
Sorry. They finally caught up with us at 4:30 in the morning. So I do apologise. But Ed is totally convinced of the film's authenticity. And I was out in Roswell with him in 2007, and I lectured at the convention there, and we toured the various places. But then Ed took me to this place what he believes is the crash site, and it is exactly as Spiros, detailed it, but it was made up. And the will to believe is very great, and he's sincere in his belief. He's Ed, but. You know what belief does. Belief is the enemy, Jimmy. He believes in it no matter what. If Santilli stood up and said, you know what, Spiros is right, I admit everything, then Ed would shift the goalpost again and say, well, somebody's paid him to say that, or it is really the government that's doing it, or the Men in Black, or the Bogeyman, or somebody else. You know what I mean? He just wouldn't believe it no matter what.
Right. Okay, let's take another break. This is a good spot, and when we come back, this is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We're on the Dark Matter Radio Network talking to Philip Mantle, live from the UK, editor of UFO Today. When we come back, I just want to touch a little bit more on Ray Santilli today. I got a couple more questions, but I want to talk about your new book, okay? So we'll take a quick break. This is Fade to Black, Jimmy Church. Don't touch that mouse. We will be back right after this. Stay with us, Philip.
I'm here.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
JJCR in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Jimmy Church, Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Thanks for everybody listening around the world. We've got some pictures up over on the website. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com. We've got some stuff posted, as we always do, and all of the links for Philip Mantle, UFO Today, and his books are all up on the site. Go check that out. And you can always email us to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And after the show tonight, like I always do, I'll be over on the website, hanging out in the forums, and seeing what everybody has to say. All right, back to Philip. Philip, are you still there?
I'm still here, Jimmy, yes.
All right, now, to carry on a little bit more about Santilli, and I've got about 4 or 5 very direct questions, and again, I have no idea where his moral character is today. But the first question that I have is, do you think he feels guilty?
No, not at all. Not one iota. I mean, again, when you get to know Ray, and some of the people with whom he mixed and worked with, like Keith Bateman. The difference is with Keith, he will admit we'd do anything to make money. Not illegal, but we'd bend the rules a little bit. I mean, Keith told us a story where there was a time in the UK, for example, where keep fit videos were all the rage, Jimmy. So he thought, I'll make one and I'll make some money. But he did it with a couple of ladies in the nude and a man in the nude. And they weren't trained to do keep fit, And he made this, he paid his few £1,000s to make it. And somebody looked at him and they said, you can't release that because it's dangerous. They're not doing it right. So Keith came up with this crazy story where he allegedly phoned one of his colleagues who he worked with from France. And he said, I want to make a new keep fit video. And he said the line was bad. And he thought I said a nude keep fit video. And hey, presto. And that little video then went on to make money because of the crazy story he'd made up. But Keith would admit that. And he told us some of the daft stunts that him and Santilli and others had become involved in. So when you get to know the kind of characters you're dealing with, Jimmy, I would have to say no. He wouldn't. I'll give you another little quote about Santilli. He allegedly owed a gentleman a significant amount of money. And this chap got on an airplane to fly to the US, flying economy. And who comes out from first class up front for Ray Santilli and said, do you want to come and have a drink with us? And he's thinking, he owes me a bucket load of money. Yeah, he's in first class and I'm down here in economy. So I don't think he would have lost any sleep at all, Jimmy. Quite the opposite.
How did you eventually, or did you confront him directly? Now that you've got Spiros here, you've got all the smoking guns, and you've got a bunch of smoking guns. How did you approach Santilli?
Well, I went to meet him in London when I was writing my book, and confronted him and his business partner, a chap called Gary Shoefield. But yet, when you go to London, you're meeting Santilli on his own turf. He'll only meet you where he wants to meet you. You can't just turn up at his office and walk in, even though I know where it is.
Right.
So we met at a local restaurant nearby, and he just denied it. I mean, he could sell you a car with no wheels, Jimmy, and tell you it's your fault that it won't go. Wait.
He denied it. He was still after everything. You're telling him you're writing a book about this hoax, and he's still in denial. You're not going to write a book about it unless you've got evidence.
Well, he just says Spiros only played a small part in it. He says that Spiros helped make the documentary, did a bit of editing and this kind of thing, And when you watch the Alien Autopsy movie, that was made, there is Spiros is of a Greek Cypriot origin, although he's born here in the UK. There is actually a Greek chap in it, or a Greek actor, and he makes wedding videos, and they use him to film it, and that's a slant at Spiros. Spiros doesn't make wedding videos, but he used to run his own TV studios.
Right.
Barefaced sat there and denied it and said, no, Spiros had a small part to play in some of the editing of the final video, but nothing more than that. And the film is what it is. And he's a bit like a politician. He'll say a lot of things without telling you anything, and just flatly denies it. You see, I don't think he can ever admit it, Jimmy, because, he's signed contracts. He made the movie. He convinced the movie people that his story was the genuine article. If you ever watch the movie, you even see him and Gary Shoefield at the end of it doing a little talk,
Right.
And so I don't think he can ever admit that it was a fake to me or anyone else, and because he could face lawsuits. So if I was in his situation, I would never admit it either. So there you go. But he hasn't been confronted, I can assure you.
What's he doing today?
Well, Ray's doing the same as he always did. I mean, his main business was music, and still is. He still has, the business in London. It's quite a successful business. He's not a poor man by any stretch of the imagination. He has a wife and family and brothers and sisters, and and he still peddles the same story.
Well, because I'm shocked that, obviously in our industry, he couldn't do anything. You know, his reputation is gone. But I guess they just don't care about, you know, things like this. How do I want to, you know, I don't want to get sued, but an obvious hoax that he did. He made a lot of money, and I don't know, but it must have been in the millions and millions of dollars. As far as I know, he hasn't given any of it back. He still owes me about $70, in my opinion. But in his industry, they just don't care, and he's able to just move on. And not have
industry. Think about the industry, Jimmy. When you do a TV documentary, they're not there to tell the truth. They're there to make a documentary. They're there to sell the advertising and make money. You know, all of the broadcasters that released this film all made money on the back of it. So they couldn't sue Santilli for loss of money because they made their money out of it. And same with the newspapers and the magazines. So everybody gained out of it. You know, nobody lost out in that respect. He might be on thin ice with the movie company, but again, we don't know the contents of the contract that he signed. You know, we don't know that.
Right.
But you know, we've challenged him, and I've said to his face, I've said in public, I say in my book, it is a fake, it is a hoax, and he would never sue you because he'd then have to prove it was real, of course, and he can't.
Right.
So you know, anybody can call it a fake, you know, a hoax. Because he would never take legal action because he'd have to put up or shut up. And of course he would lose. You know, he can't produce his cameraman, he can't produce any evidence, and you know, ad infinitum.
And you know what? And you're absolutely right. He just doesn't have to, and he doesn't care. He's moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in a number of documentaries. They're there to make a program. They make it, they move on to the next job. They don't know anything about the subject, you know. And it's just a job. We've made the money. We got the commission for it, and away we go.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Next is one on bird watching or whatever. You know, don't know anything about that either, but we'll make one. You know.
Oh, all right. Enough with Ray Santilli. You know what? I'll sleep a little better tonight. It's a bitter pill that he forced a lot of us to swallow, and this business that we're in, this business of the truth and ufology, and you know, it's a rock, it's a big boulder that we are constantly rolling uphill, and we're fighting the good fight, and then somebody like Ray comes along and just messes it up for everybody.
Well, you know, I mean, what I would say regarding that, Jimmy, is that there were the likes of the late Philip Klass and others who automatically said it's a fake. But not one of them could prove it. Not one of them could even give a slice of evidence that it was a fake. So at the end of the day, it was ufology that proved it to be a fake. You know, we've policed our own business.
Right.
And we're not afraid to say, look, you know, initially we thought we might be onto something, but at the end of the day, and it took a long time, we finally got to the bottom of it. Unfortunately, it's a fake, but it was ufology that proved it, not the Philip Klass of this world.
Well, I hope that you are never, you know, on my trail, because you do not give up until, you know, and without your work, quite possibly, if you think about it, if all of as fortunate as he was for things to fall into place, well, the same thing happened to you, and you could have given up.
And I have to, you know, pay tribute to my colleagues who helped in this. Mark Santilli, you've mentioned, has been a great help down the years and continues to be so. But there are others. There's a chap called Odd Gunnar Road in Norway. There's Maurizio Baiata in Italy.
Right.
And many more around the world. But they all played a part. I may have been the front man, but they all played their part, especially Mark. And I can't say thank you enough to him.
Yeah, it was one of the best. When you do live radio, this is the thing. When you do live radio, accidents happen. And accidents are usually the best part of live radio. I don't care what it's like a guitar solo. You're improvising a guitar solo, and that one accidental note, that one thing that was an accident, makes it brilliant. And when Mark Center called in, it was already a great show. And when he called in, it was his energy and his emotions tied with this. He's a pit bull, you know, and you're absolutely right. He is very emotional when it comes to this, and it was one of those accidents that was brilliant. And I wanted to move on real quick and talk about this book, and well, a little bit about the book because it's a novel. That's I want to know why you took that approach. But you based it on all of your research and real cases. So, an abduction for me that I've had Travis Walton on the show. I've had Yvonne Smith on the show. I've had Nadine Lalich on the show, talking about abduction and I am not fascinated is the wrong word. I'm more concerned about the entire abduction phenomena. So how did you get to the point where you thought I need to put pen to paper and get this out?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back many years, we used to have a very grand sounding thing called a UFO hotline, where you could ring in and report your sighting. It was simply an answer phone service, Jimmy. But when we started it, the first call was a local lady who turned out to be an abductee. So that set me on the path. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. There wasn't that many abductees in Britain who had gone on the record at that point. So it kind of intrigued me. I knew Bud Hopkins, who's sadly no longer with us. And I went to interview many of them. I mean, literally in the car, up and down the country, from Scotland to Wales to the south coast of England. And, most of them made quite an impression on me. And I also accessed some archive material. And my first book, published in 1994, was called Without Consent, which deals with abductions and missing time cases purely in the UK, nowhere else. And it went from there, really. I mean, more often than not, when you talk about abduction cases, you will relate, this happened to them, they went here, they remember this, they had a hypnosis or they didn't, and that's it. It's very matter of fact, Jimmy. What I found on my travels was the emotional side of things, which was what happened to them afterwards. How did their family react to this? How did their friends treat them? And a lot of that has been largely ignored because it's like any traumatic experience. That is the main part of it. Not what happened. It's what happened around you and what happened afterwards.
Exactly.
And that was kind of highlighted in the Travis Walton movie, The Fire in the Sky.
Exactly.
It wasn't necessarily what happened at the time. It was happened around him with his family and friends. So just as as an exercise, I wrote this fictitious story, although it is based on people I had interviewed. Even the UFO researcher in it was a real person. It's not me. It's based on an old friend of mine. And I call it Once Upon a Missing Time. It's a play on words there. We know that, the old fairy story, Once Upon a Time. And I just put missing time in it. And I concentrate more in the novel on the people themselves and what happens to them, how they are treated, how they cope with it emotionally. Bear in mind, this is all based, and it tells you in the epilogue that, if you're looking for answers to the UFO abduction, this is not the book for you. You won't find any answers here. So it deals with that kind of thing. And I thought the best way to do that, Jimmy, was to show that these are real people. They're not lunatics or, nutcases. They're, when these things happen, whatever they turn out to be, these are people from all walks of life. They're going about their daily tasks. They're going to work, picking the children up, taking a walk in the park, one of which was in without consent as a policeman in his patrol car at the time, on duty.
Right.
So they come from all walks of life, all genders, all ethnic origins, and these things happen. And who do you turn to?
What advice?
One of the things that kept coming through was, Jimmy, well, I've been to see my dad and I've talked to my friends and I went to the doctors. There was nobody to turn to. And that's why they ended up with people like me.
And what advice? And I ask this of every guest that I have on when it comes to abduction. Because there are people listening to us right now, Mr. Mantle, that may have concerns, but they don't know who to turn to. They don't want to talk about it. In my own experience, and this is the thing, and I want people to understand, I talk about this a lot, but in my own experiences, I've only had a few in my life where I've seen something in the sky, a couple of times, maybe 3 times. But you know what I didn't do? I didn't tell anybody about it. As innocent as it was, you don't bring this stuff up. And when it comes to abduction, the last thing you want to do is maybe even turn to your wife or your husband or your family because they're too close to you. You don't want them to think you're bonkers, so they keep it inside. What advice do you give to somebody that may have a concern? They need to talk to somebody. What do they do?
Well, you've mentioned one or two names on there, like Yvonne Smith, for example. There are a small number of people that you can turn to. And we're fortunate today in the digital age that we can find out who these people are. Yvonne is a perfect example of that. When I started, there was no digital age. It was even more difficult.
Right.
So there are people you can turn to who will treat you with respect and compassion. And I found with speaking to a lot of these abductees, they were just grateful that they could speak to somebody without any fear of ridicule or fun or whatever. And I just sat there and listened, which is it's almost like counseling somebody, Jimmy. From any traumatic experience, just to sit and listen and nod your head and be there. And that's what I found myself doing. I mean, I ladies ring up and say, and my husband thinks I'm crackers, I'm mental. Well, I don't think any of that, and I will listen to you without passing any judgment or any comment, and they're grateful for that. There are, other individuals, there are organisations now that, like Bud Hopkins was a great pioneer in this work. There's Dr. David Jacobs and others in the United States, and they will keep your details in complete confidence, and they are there if need be. But if you don't want to speak up and you think it's something you can deal with, then fine. You don't have to. There's no pressure to do that. You're not obliged to do it, and there's no force. And again, with all these experiences, people deal with it in their own way, Jimmy. Each individual is completely different to the next one. Some people think it's great. They think it's a unique experience, and they want to tell others about it. Others, are terrified by it, and every emotion in between. So I've tried to concentrate on the people themselves, the emotion, and to show that whatever these experiences are, they can and do happen to people around the world at any time, in any place, and we don't understand them. We're trying to get to grips with it and try and have a bit of respect for these people, because more often than not, Jimmy, they have more to lose than they have to gain by going on the record. They're not there for the fame and fortune. So treat them with a little bit of respect.
I've got to pick your brain a little bit. Tell us about one of the cases that you had to use that you referenced in the book.
Well, one of the main characters is a real event. I mentioned my fictitious family are called the Morrisons, right? But they're actually based on a chap called John Day and his wife Sue. Back in the 1970s, were travelling with their two children at a place called Aveley in Essex, not that far from London, certainly not in the middle of nowhere. They'd been to visit the family. They were driving back home. John wanted to get home to watch a particular television programme. On entering the village, they entered a bank of green mist. And he remembers the most peculiar thing, that the car radio started to play up. His wife turned to him and said, looked in the back seat and said, "Are you all here?" Then there was a bump and they pulled into the village. They automatically noticed that there was a period of missing time because the TV show wasn't on. It had gone. This was the day when the TV used to finish at a certain time of the evening.
Right.
Didn't run all night.
Right.
And, it perturbed John. They then remembered, I'm cutting a long story, very short, both him and his wife been taken up into this vehicle. The bit about the bump was that they weren't taking themselves, the whole car was. And when it hit the road, it was when they felt the bump, and she turned around and said, "Are they all here?" She was making sure the children were there.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I'm one of the few people to interview John, but he made a great impression on me. And I'll leave you this thought on abduction. It's something John said to me. I asked him, I says, "John, is this a physical reality? Are we talking about, a physical phenomena here?" He said, "Well, Philip," he says, "we as a species don't have the words in our vocabulary to explain this. But he says, the only way I can explain it to you is if you visit a film set, you know, a movie set, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can knock on it, and it's real. But you look behind it, and it's just an illusion. Now, you make of that what you will, Jimmy, you know? And that was the best way that John could explain that to me. And you know, take it from there, you know?
That's actually deep.
It is. It's very deep. And I'll never forget that. You know, I'll never forget. They may not be the exact words, but that is exactly what he said, you know?
And what was your, what's your interpretation of that? I mean...
I don't have one. I'm still trying to figure it out, Jimmy. You know, because you go speak to the next person and they said, no, it's nothing like that, Philip. It was, to me, it was spiritual. So that was John's interpretation of it, but it really made an effect on me. It really stuck in my mind. And sometimes when you speak to these people, Jimmy, it's not what they say, it's not what they tell you their experience, it's the people themselves and how it's affected them afterwards that makes the greatest impression on you, rather than, you know, what the beings looked like or the UFO looked like. Or
that's right,
like
that's
that.
right, that's right, that's right.
It's the after effects, so to speak.
Well,
and John made a great impression.
Well, with me, I've in the last week or so, I don't want to sound like I'm at a loss for words, but I have a lot to get out on this subject. But in the last couple of weeks, about a month ago, I interviewed Travis Walton. And the thing about Travis, that it's not, to me, the sensationalism of Fire in the Sky, because it is a great movie. It's a terrifying movie. And if the story didn't happen and it was just a movie, it's still a great movie. Love it. Right? Okay. Awesome. But when you talk to Travis, it's not the sensational parts that everybody tends to focus on and want him to talk about. It's Travis Walton, the man. You know, this is a guy that has gone through the most traumatic of traumatic experiences, and not only is he sincere, but when you talk to him, you have empathy. You feel bad for the guy because you know how traumatic of experience that he actually went through.
Absolutely. I mean, I've met Travis a couple of times, and I've been fortunate to share the platform on a couple of conferences with him. And it's exactly the same. And I've seen Travis being grilled by the news media as well. And you know, and if those that say, oh, it's all a fake, and well, you have to say, well, where's the motive?
Right.
You know, Travis still works as a foreman at the logging company.
That's right.
You know, he doesn't live in a mansion.
That's right.
He made a bit of money from the film, but you know, no great shakes. Where's the motive? I mean, there isn't one. You know, and the others that were there that evening, they've all gone on the record. I know Steve Pierce is what was spoken up in the last year or so, one of the guys that was there, and I've communicated with Steve. But yes, you can see the look on Travis's face. You know, and that's the difference. It's not scientific, Jimmy. There was experiments done years ago where they invented fictitious abductees, you know, and they came out with a story. But the thing that was missing was the emotional content.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you see it all over Travis's face when you talk to him about it, you know, and you can see him going back in time almost thinking, I wish to God this had never happened.
Exactly. You know, and I had said to Travis, when we were setting up for the interview, where, you know, we were talking on the phone and had a few conversations. He said, Jimmy, you know what? Honestly, it's been 38 years. I just can't emotionally tell this story again. I can't do it. It just rips me apart. I said, Travis, let's talk about something else. It's okay. He goes, is that all right? I don't have to go minute by minute of what they did? And I said, no, there's surely things that you've never talked about at all. And he goes, I have so much I want to talk about. I said, You know what? Let's just go on. I'll let you interview me. Let's turn I'll let you just talk about, and you should go, if you get the chance, go back and listen to that Travis Walton interview, because he talks about everything.
His book is absolutely stunning.
Yes.
Fire in the Sky. It really is.
It's an amazing book, and I understand why the movie was made the way it was, because it's Hollywood. That's fine, and it on its own merits, the movie's a great movie. But Travis commented to me after the show the next day. He said, you know, and this goes back to your point, Philip. He said, "Jimmy, after 38 years, this is the first time that I've felt good about an interview. Thank you." And you know, he went on to say some other things. Those were private, but I just gave him the opportunity to just talk and not grill him and not try to pin him in the corner and not any of that. I wanted to know, how are you doing today emotionally now that it's 38 years that you have to look back at this? How do you feel now? Why did they do this? You know, why? There was all of these other things that he had never talked about, and he needed to get it off his chest.
Yeah, I was like we mentioned about 10 minutes ago. One of the things with abductees, they're just grateful if you'll sit there and let them talk.
Therapy, yes.
Without asking daft questions, just let them talk.
Yes.
And they're grateful for that, you know. But also, I mean, I've seen a young man down in Wales whom I interviewed, absolutely terrified. And I mean, this was a tough young guy who liked his rock music and his long hair, and he was shaking. And he had to have hypnotherapy, not regressive hypnosis, hypnotherapy, to relieve the nightmares. And now he's featured in my first book, and I sent him a copy. He didn't read it for 4 years, Jimmy. 4 years later, he came back to me. He's married and got his own children, but it just terrified the living daylights out of him.
When I had moved into a house in Pasadena 30 years ago, when I first moved to California, I'm a young guy. I'm in my 20s, and the house is empty. But when I mean empty, there was I at that time I didn't even own any furniture. You know, I had like a suitcase. I move into this 5-bedroom house in Pasadena, and there's nothing in the house, completely empty. So I kind of, I wander through. There's 5 bedrooms, and I'm picking out a bedroom that is going to be mine, and I kind of put my suitcase in there, and I'm walking through the other bedroom, and I find on this on a shelf in a closet, 2 paperback books that were stuck in the back of the, it was just weird. The whole house is empty, except for these 2 paperback books. So I pull them down. I got nothing to do. I have no TV. I have no stereo. I have no nothing. I have an empty house. But boom, I got a couple paperback books. One of them was The Interrupted Journey. And I sit and I read that, and I read that book probably in about 24 hours. And by the time I put that book down, I was terrified. And because it's exactly what you're saying now about that young man in Wales, is that the experience itself, taken at face value, is about as terrifying as an experience as anybody can go through. The book freaked me out. I can't imagine. And the other book, there was 2, by the way, and the other one was The Andreessen Affair.
Well, this young guy was called David. I mean, I sat outside in the sunshine, which is rare for Wales, sunshine.
Right.
And we talked about his job, his girlfriend, his friends, just like any young guy with long hair. And he had his Iron Maiden T-shirt on. And as soon as we turned to talk about this subject, his whole demeanor changed. He started to chain smoke. He became nervous. And I was a bit inexperienced at the time, I have to be honest. And he was petrified. I didn't realize it to begin with. And I took him back to the site where it happened, and I took a photograph of him at the site. And it's only when I had the film developed, I realized how scared he was. He stood there like a plank of wood. He did not want to be there. And but like I said, it's what happens to these people. Hence, going back to my novel, that's what I concentrate on, not the event, but the people themselves, And it's just another way of telling the story, but hopefully telling it in a different light, Jimmy.
Wow, I so thank you for coming on, and this is this week on the show. Yesterday we had on Stephen Greer. Today it's you. Tomorrow is Leslie Kean. And it's this level of guests that our fans out there, the Art Bell crowd, expects from this show, and I just can't thank you enough. This is one of the best conversations I've ever had.
Well, it's my pleasure, I can assure you.
And what's in the quick future for you? What are you doing besides editing and doing everything else and writing? But do you got anything else that you're working on, or are you going to be speaking?
Yeah. No, I'm working on a book with my colleague Paul Stonehill. We've done books on UFOs in Russia before. Paul is originally from the Ukraine, but he lives in the United States, not far from Los Angeles, and we're doing a follow-up to that. So that's in the pipeline for later this year. The Alien Autopsy book, Roswell Alien Autopsy, believe it or not, has been adapted into a screenplay, which we're trying to sell.
Oh.
We're not had any luck yet. And similarly, Once Upon a Missing Time has been adapted into a screenplay, simply called Missing Time. And again, we're looking to try and see if we can get some interest in that. So it's a long journey with those two projects, but we are hopeful. So again, it's just another way of telling the story.
You're going to add filmmaker to your resume then, apparently.
Not at all. Not at all.
I really want to thank you for coming out. Now, listen, I'm inviting you back officially. I want to. We're doing a couple of things over this next month. One of them, your friend Richard Dolan, I think I mentioned this to you. He's coming out this month, February 18th, and we're going to actually live broadcast the show as he releases his book here in the United States, and it's going to be at a venue. It's going to be awesome. I don't think anybody's ever done this before, but so we're going to get that behind us. But next month, I want to bring you back on. I want to talk about Russia. And I think that the Russian, it's really weird. The Russian stuff, as far as ufology goes, yeah, okay, you can go to YouTube and see what you will, but it's overlooked, and I know you concur.
Absolutely. I mean, it's what we know about the things in Russia is the tip of the iceberg, quite literally. I'm fortunate that Paul was originally from the Ukraine, so he speaks and reads and writes the language. So that helps enormously. I don't take much notice of YouTube anyway. And, we're grateful for our contacts that we have in the former Soviet Union, which we have used to on many occasions. We're in regular contact with them. And, I know Richard is publishing our next book, so I'm sure he'll do well when you do the live broadcast. And I wish you well with it. And I'll gladly come back and speak anytime, Jimmy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want you to come back, and we'll spend some time on this Russian subject, and you're an expert. So I would really appreciate that. So the invitation is open, and we'll get that sometime in March, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
Philip Mantle, Mr. Philip Mantle, thank you for coming on the show. This is Fade to Black. And Philip, I'll shoot you an email tomorrow. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Jimmy.
All right, Fade to Black. We will be back after this on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Stay with us.
This is William from La Crescenta, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Jimmy Church.
My name is Alan, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network. Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Mantle. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio, the revolution.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. KJCR. www.jimmychurchradio.com on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Thursday. Thank you, Philip Mantle. That was amazing. And I just have to say this. That is why I do radio. Right there. You go and you learn something. You just hang out. You're in your room. It's dark. You've got your iPad. Crank it up. Set it on the nightstand. Close your eyes and just listen. And trip out. And that is why I do radio. Right there. Somebody asked me the other day, do you ever go back and listen to previous shows? And I don't. I just don't do it. I have no idea. We do 3 hours live, bam, it's over, and you move on. You go hang out in the forums and answer email and do that kind of stuff. But I don't go back and listen to the shows, and I forget 90% of, more like 99% of what I said. I just don't remember. But this show, I just may go back and listen to. That was amazing. Now, we were talking, the team here, we're having a production meeting, and one of the things that came up is famous hoaxes. So what I think we came to the conclusion that we want to do maybe a show a week, and shoot me an email and let me know what you think about this. But we were thinking about doing a hoax show once a week, because it's a fascinating subject. You go and you bust the culprits and you just unravel stuff. And so what came to mind was this. There was, and again, shoot me an email if you have any information or if you remember this hoax. But there was, in the mid-90s, I haven't done any research on it to remember stuff, but I think it was called ACC, the American Computer Corporation. And in the mid-90s, and I'm going to guess here and say 95, maybe 96, could have been even maybe before 94, 95. American Computer Corporation started, and back then, processor speeds, things were crucial. Now everything is super fast and it doesn't really matter. You're not going to. Speed increases now are a little bit smaller than they were back then. Back then, it was like every couple of months a new Pentium chip was coming out and things were doubling like overnight. And American Computer Corporation, they had a website, and on their website, they actually had forums. And one of the things, they had a bunch of stuff that they were touting. But one of the things that they had was a computer chip with alien technology. Now, I'm not making this up. The forums, to go and hang out, it was almost like what happened with John Teeter a few years later. But you would jump into these forums, and there were moderators and crazy people, and the owner of the company would come in and they're making all of these claims, and some of it was almost violent. Some of the conversations. Now I'm going to go. Well, anyway, let me stay on target here. Remember, I have a cold. My brain's not working right now. But the claims were that they had alien technology that was recovered, I believe it was Roswell to be specific, that allowed their computer chips to run at these astronomical speeds. And you can actually go and purchase a computer from ACC with these secret alien chips. Now, I'm gonna get into this and do some investigations. I will see if we can produce some of the forums. It's got to be out there. I haven't done it in a while. I remember a couple of years ago, the memories came flooding back, and I went and checked it out, and I found a bunch of stuff. So I know it's out there. And if anybody listening right now has any information about ACC, send it over to us, and I would like to also photographs. There was a bunch of, you could go and order a computer. That was the thing. You can go and order it, and you can have it custom configured. You can get it with the alien chips. You can get it without the alien chips. And if memory serves right, they kept delaying this super chip. It's going to be in a month. It's going to be in a month. Hang on. If you've ordered the computer, don't worry about it. We will deliver it. We are. And it just went on and went on and went on for probably about a year until the BS meters for everybody started to really fly off the handle. And I think the authorities got involved. And But I've got to reveal this, and it is one of the most fascinating stories out there. Again, it's why you come to this show. And for all of us old timers, because you have to remember now, this is 20 years ago. There are people listening to this show today that weren't even born when ACC was doing their thing. But if you remember ACC, shoot me an email. If you've got any information or anything, let's collect the data. Let's get it out there, and let's have a great show with it. But the biggest hoaxes, there's a bunch out there. I don't want to. When you claim hoax, you need to really, 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 really be careful. So I'm just not going to fly off the handle now and start naming names and companies and stuff. But the confirmed hoaxes, the ones that have been busted, absolutely. And I think we're going to kick things off with ACC. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Thank you for putting up with my cold. I can barely breathe right now. We need to take a break so I can take care of myself. I'll be back after this. KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't touch that mouse. We'll be right back.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will. On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
This is Kristen, Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio
Network. All right, everybody, welcome back. KJCR, Fade to Black. I am your very sick host, Jimmy Church. We're on the Dark Matter Radio Network, and it is a privilege to be here and speak with all of you around the world. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Follow us on Twitter. Tonight's the big Twitter test. Right there, if you're listening to me right now, click on Twitter and go and follow us. If you're at jimmychurchradio.com, or if you're not, go to jimmychurchradio.com. It's right there. Click on it. If you're at artbell.com right now, just go onto the Faded Black page, which is easy enough to do because you're listening, and click on Twitter. Follow us. Tonight's the big Twitter test. Now, got a couple of emails through the break, and I love it because they come in real time, and they get sent into here, into the studio. And, talking about hoaxes, and, what about John Teeter? Email comes in. What about John Teeter? The John Teeter hoax. John Teeter's not a hoax. Nobody's been busted yet. A hoax is when somebody's been busted. I mean, cold busted. I got another email. What about Billy Meyer? Billy Meyer's a hoax. Well, again... And I would like to get the guys on here that represent Billy Meyer. And actually, we got some email from them earlier this week. And the thing is about the Billy Meyer case is, well, okay, he's lived a fascinating life. Got his arm cut off. He was a secret agent. He was a mercenary. He's a soldier. He did all kinds of crazy things way before all of that, the photographs and the videos came out. And not all of the videos, and I'm not going to get into the whole Cal Korff thing. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to give him any airtime or publicity on that and his investigation. I'm not going to go there. There's been a lot of debunking attempted at Billy Meyer. And is it officially a hoax? Oh, man. my personal feelings aside, and if we get their representation on this show, we'll handle it right. Because I don't know if they'll want to come on to this show and have me tear them apart too as well. Because I want the Billy Meyer story to be true. Deep in my heart, I mean, you listen to him talk and you look at his face. I mean, he's just such a nice guy. You just want it to be true. You just don't want it to be bad, but or wrong, I should say. But so Billy Meyer, hoax, I don't know. The photographs are just too good. A one-armed model maker and videographer and filmographer and all of that, doing it with, I don't know. It would be he would be a really talented guy if he pulled it all off with one arm, which means for it to be a hoax, he had to have somebody help him. Nobody's officially been busted. Some of the photographs, most of the video look a little sketchy to me. Some of the photographs look amazing. I was talking last week on the show about a friend of mine, Dale Romero, and Dale is probably listening in Las Vegas, but him and his brother were really influential about my career into ufology. And one of the things that they had was this huge Billy Meyer video collection. This is in the mid-'80s, a long time ago, and a big collection of books. And when I first saw those photographs of Billy Meyer, I was blown away. I mean, they were just too good, too perfect. And I was happy that there was photographs out there like this. When I look at them today, I feel different than I did then. Maybe I was innocent. Maybe I was younger. Certainly hadn't seen anything like that up to that time. But today, the Billy Meyer case, to me, is just wide open. It hasn't officially, so before we call Billy, when you send me an email, what about the Billy Meyer hoax? No, I'm not going there. And like I said, their representatives have reached out. We might get them on the show, but they've got to have to agree to put up with my my scrutiny and my skepticism. Shoot me an email if you want them on the show. And look, there's a lot of followers and believers out there of Billy. I'm not here to offend people. There are people out there that fully believe that it's a hoax, and they would love for me to probably take a stab at it. I'm right in the middle. And so they would have to come on the show and agree. I just don't want to offend anybody, but I also want the truth. And that's why you come to this show. Now, anyway, what was I talking about right before that? Somebody refresh my memory. John Teeter. So, yeah, John Teeter, that's a different story. John Teeter, hoax? No. Phenomena? Yes. Legend? Yes. Internet? Sensation, yes. Hoax, if it's a hoax, it's the greatest hoax of all time. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Shoot me some more email. I'll get to them. I don't have any time for calls. We're at the end of the show. I'm going to take one more quick break, read a couple more emails, get a couple thoughts out, and then get ready for tomorrow night, which is Leslie Kean. Leslie Kean is on the show tomorrow. What a week of radio. I love doing this. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't touch that mouse. Shoot me a couple of more emails, and we'll go hang out in the forums tonight. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network. Hey, this is Alan Yohannes from the Vultures and Queens of the Stone Age. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Oh, God.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I love saying that. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Shoot me some email. Give me something to read overnight, too, as well. All right, I've always got like 30, 40, 50. And it's just great reading. Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. I wanted to say, follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The links are right there. Go and do it. Go and do it. The big Twitter test is tonight. See what we can do. Get over 500 followers tonight. Twitter's tough. All right. Getting back to some email, and I'm not going to say this person's name, and I know he's listening to the show right now, and so I'm just going to say this. One of the listeners to the show, we've been exchanging email and doing a few things over the last month or so, but he's an author, really good one too. And he sent me this email this evening that said, Jimmy, after the Stephen Greer interview, it got me going. I'm not going to read word for word. I'm just going to paraphrase here. But he said, it got me going, and I went back. I was 80% done with my new novel, and I'm finishing it up. And I had to go back, and I wrote an extra 800 words because of the Stephen Greer. So, and he sent me today, and thank you. Thank you, Don. He sent me the first 3 chapters of his new book, and I read through it today, and I shot him off a tweet real quick to say, man, he's got me hooked. This new book's going to be great, and I can't wait till it comes out. And so anyway, but for that, I was just thinking, man, really, Dr. Greer? Wow, and reading the first 3 chapters of the book, I get it, I understand, and I understand the inspiration too as well. And I'm looking forward to the new book coming out. And so I got a couple of other emails today too when I commented last night about, I did 2 little rants last night. I did one on what the Earth looks like when you're looking back at the Earth, because the traditional, not only the traditional photographs, but the way that we've always perceived, or the blue planet, and but that's not really what you see when you see Earth. You see technology, you see life, you see lights, you see things going on. And, it's obvious that the Earth is alive, that there's life here, there's intelligence here. And so I made those comments last night about, if you drive by Earth, you don't need to land on this planet to see what's going on. It's obvious that there's life here. And when we look into our own solar system here with, Venus and Mars and Saturn and Jupiter, we can pick up a telescope, look in your backyard, go look at Jupiter, and there's nothing going on there. Go look at Mars, there's nothing going on. There's no life. There's nothing lit up. There's nothing there. But it's easy to detect what is going on with Earth. You just got to glance at it, and you can see the life. And the emails that I got about it were on both sides of the fence. But I just want to drive this home. And I know that we're working hard at it, but I would think that we would be able to put together the technology to detect lights on another planet in another solar system. There must be a way to detect that. And what I was trying to say was when a planet is it's moving, it's rotating, then you would be able to see those lights on it rotate as well. And I would just think that technology would be there. But my point that I was trying to drive home is this. If we, in our little minuscule intelligence that we have here, and it's nothing compared to what would be out there as an advanced life form, and their technology, it would be so easy. They know that we're here. And that's the point that I tried to drive home with that last night. We're detecting billions of planets all the time now. It's just billions of Earths out there. And if we can do that with, we don't have any technology. We're dumb compared to what could possibly be out there. And if you don't think they know we're here, they know we are here. And you need to think about that. Oh, I just wanted to say, I was just looking at a couple of things right now, listening to this show right now. Listen to this, and if you don't think it's international, this is just crazy. Of course, we got the United States. We got our good friends to the north in Canada, and Philip Mantle being in today, huge audience over in the United Kingdom. But just listen to this. Australia, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, Czech Republic, France, Croatia, Argentina, Belarus, Spain, Brazil, Ireland, Finland, Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, Poland, Slovenia, and the list goes on. But it's so cool to get email and know that people are listening to this show around the world, and those are countries. Those aren't the cities. It's just the country. United States is one country. We've got thousands of listeners in cities and states across the United States, and that's the way it's represented. And I watch this map light up during the show, and bing, 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 bing. It is absolutely crazy to me. And the email that comes in from around the world, and I'm just so happy, and it is such a privilege. Now, also, let me just get to this. Tomorrow night is Leslie Kean, and Leslie. She just came in. She was down in South America. She just got back to the States, and she said, I'll contact you as soon as I get back, and let me get rested. And I said, are you rested? She says, yeah, I'm so excited to come on the show, looking forward to it. And this was something that we worked on for a really, really long time. And to have Leslie, and I said this to her yesterday, actually, think about who opened up for you this week, and you're closing out the show this week. And it is that kind of show that we want to put together every single night. No filler, no slouch acts, nothing like that on this show. The show tonight with Philip was absolutely amazing. And being able to bring in Leslie Kean tomorrow, somebody that I've admired and looked up to for a long time, and she does it all. She's not just one single approach to this ufology issue. She's not only an author, but she's a filmmaker and a broadcaster. And I was looking at some pictures of her last week. She has been on every major show, every news outlet, every major player there is, and she's coming on the show tomorrow. And I just cannot wait, and I'm totally excited. So just let me say in advance, if there's anything that you need to get out there to Leslie, get the questions coming in now, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. It's going to be a great interview tomorrow, great conversation. But I'm just saying in advance, this is an opportunity that doesn't come up too often. And tomorrow night will be Leslie Kean live from New York. And if there's anything you want me to get to her, get the emails coming now. I've already had a few come in. So that's about it. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Spooky South Coast with my guy, Tim Weisberg. Tim, you should have ironed your shirt in that movie. Special thanks to Keith Rowland. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kumirian. The show is produced by Hilton J. Palm. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. That separates him from all of the other Mark Kovars out there in the world. Music is by Doug Aldrich. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.